This will sound very strange, but the cargo ship that got stuck on the Suez Canal and clogged the world's shipping and trade artery, holding up $9 billion of goods a day, is a prophecy that is predicting that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash that will be caused due to a bird strike on precisely July 20th, 2022. After Harris's death, she will be replaced by Michelle Obama, and Michelle Obama will be replaced by Barack Obama in October 2022. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction was made ahead of time, as does this timestamped email and forensic notes PDF. If you are skeptical, please email me and I will forward these to you. It has been known since the autumn of 2020 that she will die in a plane crash. But as can be seen here in this email, it was known since August of 2021. This Suez Canal ship prophecy is also a prophecy that is predicting the precise date, July 26th, 2022, that the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years will crash over Niagara Falls. And when this happens, this will be the big end times sign that is communicating that the end times Great Tribulation judgment period is beginning now. God placed this barge on the Niagara River during World War I and the Spanish flu pandemic as a set alarm clock, and the purpose of this prediction is to prove this. The very purpose for this prediction for the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash due to a bird strike is to prove that everything else that is being said in this video is true. I'll just repeat that so as to be perfectly clear. The reason God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that everything else that is being said in this video is true. The purpose of this prediction is to prove that God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is being explained on this channel, and that all of the main conclusions stated on this channel that are derived from God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that many people will disagree with are in fact truth, including, just for example, that the doctrine of imminence derived from the misunderstood passage, "No one knows the day," is absolutely false. The day is now known with certainty, and corresponding action should be taken. Jesus commanded his disciples to watch for the signs of his return. Yet if the average Christian today were asked if they can name one prophetic sign, they will not even understand the question. They are in fact sleeping, just as Jesus warned they would be. That said, the full intended meaning of God's prophetic end times signs cannot be properly understood without their connections to other signs and their context within the bigger picture of signs. The full intended meaning of God's prophetic end times signs and his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is what is being explained on this channel. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is an interconnected web, and all of the main conclusions that are being explained on this channel are inextricably tied to all of the other conclusions that are derived from God's big picture of signs. In other words, the knowledge and confirmation for all of the conclusions are inseparable and would not be possible without the knowledge and confirmation of the other conclusions. In other words, to be very clear, the prediction being made in this video absolutely proves that the God of the Bible is the true God. Jesus is the Son of God. The Bible is the inspired Word of God. His second coming will absolutely be on the Day of Atonement in 2024. The resurrection rapture event will absolutely be on the Feast of Trumpets in 2022. The two antichrists identified in these videos on this channel are absolutely the two antichrists. The mark of the Antichrist identified in the videos on this channel is the mark of the Antichrist. It isn't a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. It, in its current form, is right now the mark of the Antichrist. And the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is identified at the end of this video. Jesus said he hates this Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, and that he is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach this doctrine and have the works that are a result of this doctrine. And the vast majority of Christianity today, 90 to 95%, believes this false Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. We are what we believe, and the vast majority of people that call themselves Christians have the works that are a result of this false Nicolaitan doctrine, which is why the vast majority of Christians will not make the rapture. The primary purpose of the end times is judgment on the church. The persecution of the church through the Antichrist will compel Christians to finally get rid of this false Nicolaitan doctrine and demonstrate saving faith through their actions. One of the main reasons why this Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is the problem is because the vast majority doesn't believe they need to learn about doctrine. Most people mistakenly believe that the Nicolaitan doctrine couldn't possibly be their doctrine or the doctrine of their church. It must be those, quote, other churches, unquote. This prediction will prove that this is most certainly wrong, and that you need to become knowledgeable about doctrine and what the Bible really says instead of what mainstream Christian culture has taught. Speaking through the prophet Hosea, God said, "My people are destroyed for a lack of knowledge." If you are Christian, the primary purpose of this prediction is this warning I am giving you right now. Listen to the message at the end of this video regarding the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day, and then follow my instructions regarding the links to other resources. And this Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is the root reason why the vast majority of Christianity today has not been able to recognize what the mark of the Antichrist is. In other words, the reason why the vast majority of Christians are not able to recognize that this thing is the mark of the Antichrist is because this thing is judgment on the church for this Nicolaitan doctrine. Proving these things is the purpose of this prediction, and any other conclusions regarding these things is to miss the point of this prediction and misses the point of this channel. In other words, after the prediction being made in this video comes to pass, you should realize that you should watch every single minute of every video on this channel, including the end of this video, which identifies what the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day is, that God has indisputably identified through his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. As well, the videos on this channel are not updates on current events. Instead, all of these videos serve as a library of God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. Go back into the archive and watch all of the videos. And if you are new to Christianity, I understand that there may be some stumbling blocks, things that other Christians have taught that unfortunately are not what the Bible teaches. For example, although those that reject Christ will pay the price for their sin and then die a second death, they will not be tortured in hell forever. And the unfortunate teaching that Jesus' death somehow satisfied God's anger and sense of justice, or a flood that covered the entire planet. I encourage everyone to go through all of the information on my website, TrumpPrediction.com or PredictionsProveIt.com, and also watch the video Part 1 of the Big Picture of Signs. In February and throughout March, I was predicting that the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years would finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls on precisely March 29th. Here is the email that documented this prediction. I also predicted that on March 29th, the Dow Jones Industrial Average Stock Index and the stock market as a whole would make its all-time peak and then begin its crash over the metaphorical waterfall into the biggest economic collapse in all of history. In a minute, I will explain how I knew about March 29th ahead of time. Instead of the Niagara barge finally breaking free on March 29th, and the stock market peaking and beginning its crash, the cargo ship in the Suez Canal finally broke free. And this story about this cargo ship was focused on the financial economic losses due to the loss of trade as a result of this blockage of the Suez Canal. That this cargo ship broke free on March 29th, and this story involved economic losses. matches my prediction for March 29th that the Niagara barge would break free and the stock market would begin its economic losses. When his disciples asked him for the signs of his return, Jesus replied with, quote, "You will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not alarmed, for this must take place, but the end is not yet. For nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom, and there will be famines and earthquakes in various places. All these are but the beginning of the birth pains." This beginning of the birth pains is clearly the period of World War I. World War I ended the 500-year rule of the Ottoman Empire over the Palestine area and began the British Mandate for Palestine, which led to the Balfour Declaration declaring that Palestine be a homeland for the Jewish people, allowing Jewish immigration to Palestine. This is arguably a very symbolic beginning of the restoration of Israel in the 20th century, and it coinciding with World War I, which clearly fits the description of wars and rumors of wars, confirms that this is the beginning of the birth pains that Jesus was speaking about. World War I, which also led to World War II, was a definite nation will rise against nation and kingdom against kingdom. World War I ended precisely on the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month, and it ended precisely 11,111 days before the prophetic lunar eclipse blood moon of the blood moon tetrad that coincided with the official rebirth of Israel in 1948. With this, God was pointing to Isaiah 11:11. In that day, the Lord will extend his hand yet a second time to recover the remnant that remains of his people. He will raise a signal for the nations and will assemble the banished of Israel and gather the dispersed of Judah from the four corners of the earth. This historic barge that involves the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls, at the time that it got stuck before almost going over the falls, got stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River in 1918, the year of the Spanish flu pandemic during World War I. God placed this barge on the Niagara River as a timer. It is like a set alarm clock. When this barge crashes over Niagara Falls, it will be the symbolic alarm going off that now is the time of the beginning of the end times Great Tribulation period. This barge is in a way like a wound-up spring ready to uncoil itself. It is sitting on the rocks of the Niagara River, ready to go over the falls as a signal of the beginning of judgment. When this barge crashes over Niagara Falls, it will be the massive prophetic sign that judgment is beginning. In fact, I believe that the main purpose for the existence of Niagara Falls is to demonstrate this most important prophetic sign. The cargo ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal in late March was a massive prophetic sign from God that was pointing to the historic barge that has been stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River for over 100 years since World War I and the year of the Spanish flu pandemic. The cargo ship in the Suez Canal symbolizes this historic barge on the Niagara River, and barges are also used for carrying cargo. The Suez Canal symbolizes the Niagara River, and the word Niagara in the native Indian language means the straight and narrow way. The Suez Canal is also a straight and narrow passageway. The straight and narrow Niagara River and Suez Canal symbolizes the straight and narrow way that is hard and leads to life that few people will find, as Jesus said. The moon symbolizes Christ, as God the Father symbolizes the sun, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. What finally caused the ship on the Suez Canal to break free was the tidal effect that was caused by the moon. This symbolized our breaking free from the bondage to this world and the ruler of this world, Satan, due to the effect of the resurrected Christ, who conquered death. This cargo ship got stuck on the Suez Canal on Nisan 10 and then was freed the day after the Feast of Passover, the dates in the Hebrew calendar that coincide with the day that Jesus entered Jerusalem officially as the King of the Jews while riding on the donkey and then was crucified on the eve of Passover. The Suez Canal is in Egypt, and the first Passover in ancient Egypt was when the angel of death passed over the houses of the Hebrews that had applied the blood of the lamb on the wooden doorposts and the lintel, thereby saving their firstborn sons, which was a picture in the Old Testament of Christ's sacrifice on the cross. After this first Passover, the Hebrews left Egypt and crossed the Red Sea at the location of this shallow underwater land bridge after the Red Sea had been parted. And this too is what this cargo ship on the Suez Canal symbolizes, that stretches from one bank of the canal to the other bank. To learn about the amazing archaeological evidence for the Red Sea crossing, watch the video series on this channel in the playlist titled The Most Astounding Information Ever. Like the Niagara barge, this cargo ship in the Suez Canal got stuck. The Niagara barge got stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River just before it was about to crash over Niagara Falls. It was drifting downriver out of control with 2 men on board. This was followed by the rescue operation of the 2 men that were trapped on the barge, which involved the U.S. Coast Guard shooting a lifeline to the barge from the banks of the river. It was the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls. This historic rescue effort is symbolized by the historic effort to free this cargo ship from being stuck in the Suez Canal. A big aspect of this news story regarding this ship that got stuck in the Suez Canal was the complete mystery as to how long it would actually take for this cargo ship to break free. This is the same with this Niagara barge. No one has any clue as to when this barge will finally break free and crash over Niagara Falls. As the news media reported in October of 2019, after the barge moved for the first time in 101 years, the barge could go over Niagara Falls tomorrow, or it could literally go over Niagara Falls 100 years from now. Earlier in this video, I mentioned that I would provide the amazing explanations as for why I knew about March 29th ahead of time. Again, it was believed that the barge would break free and crash over Niagara Falls, and the stock market would peak and begin its crash on March 29th. And instead, on March 29th, the cargo ship broke free, and it was a story about economic loss. I don't have time in this video to provide the explanations. However, if you are interested and you would like to learn about God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, and the details and explanations for how I knew about March 29th ahead of time, I will leave links to videos in the description box below this video that will provide the mountain of astounding and profound explanations. That said, I will give one reason quickly. Signs including the frozen Niagara Falls and its rainbow on February 22nd pointed to the stock market sign on February 24th, when the Dow passed 32,000 for the first time and hit 32,009 points before then receding back below 32,000, was confirming the date 329, and the date 329, March 29th, was exactly 3,209 days after extreme performer Nick Wallenda engendered a cross with his tightrope and balancing pole, and him a man at the center of this cross, when he walked across Niagara Falls from Goat Island, which is Antichrist symbolism, to a location named Table Rock, which is symbolism for Christ. Niagara Falls is also Noah's flood judgment symbolism. It symbolizes the power of water moving over the earth. This historic barge symbolizes Noah's Ark, and this most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls symbolizes the rescue of Noah and his family from the coming flood judgment. Niagara Falls engenders a perennial rainbow, which is God's sign regarding judgment and is described in the last verse of the account of Noah's flood in Genesis 9:17, and it is recorded that the flood began on the 17th day of the second month. which is why Winter Storm Noah was officially named on the 17th day of the second month, February 17th, 2018, as I predicted it would be weeks ahead of time. It is recorded that the floodwaters lasted for 40 days, and March 29th was 40 days after February 17th, the 17th day of the second month. The Noah's flood symbolism signs we received on February 17th, including the winter storm in the state of Texas, were exactly 17 months after the date 9/17 in 2019, which was the day that 9 barges broke free and crashed into the I-10 bridge on the San Jacinto River in Texas as a result of Tropical Storm Imelda that flooded Houston, the fourth biggest city in the U.S., with 4 feet of water over 4 days, and was the fourth wettest storm in Texas history. And these 9 barges broke free and crashed into the I-10 bridge 44 days before this historic barge on the Niagara River moved for the first time on October 31st, 2019. From the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment. The 9 barges crashed into the I-10 bridge, and the I-10 bridge hints at the number 110, which from the Bible symbolizes judgment. God frequently pairs the numbers 9 and 110 together in order to confirm the signs and connections, because they both symbolize judgment and hint at 9/11. In the book of Joshua in the Bible, Joshua died at the age of 110. Joshua led the Hebrews around the security walls of the ancient city of Jericho before they collapsed in judgment. On 9/11, the Twin Towers, which were 110 stories high, collapsed, engendering a small earthquake that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall, where George Washington was inaugurated, on Wall Street. President George Washington was a founding father, and his inauguration as the first president was a symbolic founding of the nation. The cracking of the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street on 9/11 symbolized America's foundation in God being cracked. This is because after Washington's inauguration at Federal Hall, he then walked down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel, where he consecrated the nation to God, saying that if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its blessings. After 9/11, Trinity Chapel was called the Miracle Chapel, as it was the only building at Ground Zero to have survived. It did not even suffer a broken window due to the 70-year-old sycamore tree that was uprooted as it sheltered the chapel from the falling debris. In commemoration of this sycamore tree outside the chapel, today there is a huge bronze statue of its roots. In other words, through the 9/11 events, God was pointing to Trinity Chapel and Washington's covenantal consecration of the nation to God at Trinity Chapel. Wall Street is named after the original 9-foot-high wall of security that the Dutch built to keep the British and the Indians out. The collapse of 110 floors that cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, which is named after a 9-foot-high security wall, hints at 9/11 and points to Joshua, who died at 110, and the Hebrews that marched around the walls of security before they collapsed in judgment. 110 floors and the 9-foot-high wall of security that was Wall Street points to George Washington's march down Wall Street to Trinity Chapel that symbolized a covenantal relationship between America and God. To this effect, Washington's march down Wall Street with the New York Stock Exchange, the building that symbolizes America's financial strength, located on one side of the street, and Federal Hall, the building that symbolizes America's governmental and institutional strength on the other side, also pointed to the cutting rights ritual practiced in ancient Israel that was used in Abraham's and God's ritual walk in their covenant that is described in Genesis 15. A covenant that symbolizes Washington's walk down Wall Street and his covenantal consecration of the nation to God at Trinity Chapel. There are only two nations in the history of the world that were founded not on ethnicity or territory or language, but were founded solely for God: Israel and America. In every daily Bible that is divided into 365 readings, a portion of the Bible for each day of the year, on every September 11th, everyone that reads this standard 365-day Bible reads the passage in the book of Isaiah, chapter 9, verse 11, which is the judgment warning on ancient Israel, which was a raid on ancient Israel by the world's first recorded terrorists, the ancient Assyrians. And the terrorists on 9/11 were from the same part of the world. The Assyrians raided the northern kingdom of Israel first, and then later the southern kingdom of Judah was destroyed, which is why the terrorists on 9/11 hit the North Tower first, followed 17 minutes later by the South Tower. And this Isaiah 9:11 passage includes a mention of collapsed buildings and uprooted sycamore trees. On the morning after 9/11, Senate Majority Leader Tom Daschle gave a speech to the world regarding the events on 9/11. He quoted the passage in Isaiah 9:11, not realizing it was a judgment warning on the ancient Jews. He quoted how, after the raid by the Assyrians, the Hebrews did not repent to God, but instead vowed defiantly to rebuild and become stronger than before. And so, like the ancient Jews, America did not repent after the judgment warning, and instead defied God even more. And so, like ancient Israel, America will now be destroyed. This is why, in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, he frequently pairs together the number 110 and the number 9. Both of these numbers symbolize God's judgment on the nation, and paired together, these numbers point to the big judgment warning that was 9/11. As well, these numbers paired together in God's signs and connections serve as a witness confirmation that the perceived signs and connections are from God. And the day the historic barge moved for the first time, as a result of a record-breaking storm that caused deadly record-breaking flooding in eastern New York State and western New England, the area of the flight paths of the two planes that flew from Boston to New York and into the two towers on 9/11, was the same day that the Maria fire began, which burned 9,999 acres and was exactly 110 weeks after the emergency evacuation in the middle of the night of 70,000 people in Puerto Rico due to the threat of the waters bursting forth from the dam that was damaged in Hurricane Maria, which is Noah's flood symbolism. Pairings of the numbers 9 and 110 hint at 9/11 through the 110 floors and 9-foot-high wall that was Wall Street, and this is why, from the prophetic sign in Puerto Rico that was caused by Hurricane Maria, it is exactly 110 weeks to the day that the Maria fire began, which burned 9,999 acres, and this is why 9 barges broke free and crashed into the I-10 highway bridge, which hinted at the number 110. It was during the fourth wettest storm in Texas history that dumped 4 feet of water over 4 days on the fourth biggest city that these barges crashed, and this was 44 days before the barge on the Niagara River moved for the first time. The 9 barges also crashed into the I-10 bridge 44 days after the birthday of the 44th president, when 4 people died in the massive power outage in Jakarta, Indonesia, the city where the 44th president grew up. This was in turn 50 days after Pentecost in 2019 and the day that 44 million people were without power in Argentina, the country in which Pope Francis grew up. This 44 million people blackout occurred on Pentecost, which is symbolized by the number 50 and symbolizes the church. And Pentecost literally means 50th day, and that's why these two blackouts are 50 days apart. And these two blackouts in Argentina and Indonesia pointed to the 2 antichrists described in the book of Revelation that will persecute the church. They will persecute the church through the false religion of the new COVID religion, the new religion of the godless leftists, and will force the church to take the experimental injections, which are part of the mark of the beast that is described in the book of Revelation. The 44th president, the basketball president, wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school, as do the two GOATs of basketball, Michael Jordan and LeBron James, also wear jersey number 23, and GOAT is Antichrist symbolism. The day of 4 deaths on the day of the 44th president's birthday was 50 days after 44 million people were without power, and this birthday was also exactly 50 months after Game 1 of the 2015 NBA Finals, in which the GOAT of basketball, which is Antichrist symbolism, King James, scored 44 points, but still lost the game, and the news media headlines reported how it was the opposing team's defensive strategy to let King James score 44 points. And in the Bible, it is mentioned 7 times that the end times period of the Antichrist's rule will be for 1,260 days. And 1,260 days after King James scored 44 points was another game in which LeBron James scored 44 points. And in this game, he became the 4th all-time career scorer. From the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes judgment, and connections of 9 years are extremely prophetic. Exactly 9 years before the 4 deaths on the day of the 44th president's birthday in 2019, the basketball president, for his birthday in 2010, hosted a private basketball game comprised of Dream Team players, including LeBron James. The basketball president's 49th birthday in 2010 was 9 + 9 + 9 days after the airing of a TV special titled The Decision, in which LeBron James announced his controversial decision to change teams from Cleveland to the Miami Heat. This TV show titled The Decision symbolizes God's decision of judgment and destruction for America. This is why this show, The Decision, aired exactly 7 years after NASA's Mars probe named Opportunity was launched. In Bible prophecy, 7 years symbolizes the end times period. The Opportunity probe symbolizes the opportunity America was given to repent and come back to God before God destroys the nation through the Antichrist, the basketball president. And this is why the Opportunity probe was launched exactly 666 days after 9/11 in 2001. And 9/11 was the judgment warning sign of all judgment warning signs. In 2018, NASA lost communication with Opportunity, and this symbolized America's lost opportunity to repent and turn back to God. The last message Opportunity sent was, "My battery is low and it's getting dark." Most people have yet to take the red pill and are still unaware that democracy has ended in America. We live in Soviet-style censorship of media and truth in a one political party state, that corruption is rampant at the highest levels of government and industry, including the religiously worshipped NIH, CDC, WHO, and pharmaceutical industry, and that these are very dark times in America that are about to get much darker. Also, the planet Saturn is Antichrist symbolism, with its 6-sided hexagon shape over its north pole, and in the Bible, the enemy is said to come from the north. This is why, for example, on 9/11, it was the North Tower that was struck first, which paralleled the northern kingdom of Israel being raided by the Assyrians from the north. And what is called a Saturn return is when Saturn completes one revolution around the stars, which is approximately 28 to 29 years. And 9/11 in 2001 was an exact Saturn return from the day that the Twin Towers officially opened on the date 4/4 in 1973. The date 4/4 hints at the 44th president, the Antichrist, and this exact Saturn return took place between the two horns of the constellation Taurus, which in ancient Hebrew astrology symbolized the coming judge. The two towers of the World Trade Center symbolize the two horns of Taurus. The reason the Twin Towers officially opened on the date 4/4, April 4th, in 1973, the official opening of the World Trade Center, was to identify the Antichrist, the 44th president, the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school, and the date 4/4 in 1973 was exactly 23 years after 4/4 in 1950, the date that the UN Trustee Council officially recommended that Jerusalem be made an international city, the big thing that the Antichrist will lead the world in doing in the end times, the big thing for which the world will be judged. This exact 23 years connection to the official opening of the World Trade Center, which was an exact Saturn return to the day of the Twin Towers collapse on 9/11, is why this in turn connects with the trail of signs that involve the GOAT of basketball, player number 23, LeBron James. The 4 deaths in the Indonesian blackout on the 44th president's birthday was in turn exactly 44 weeks before the prophetic Feast of Pentecost in 2020, when the official death toll reached 110,000 on the same day that 9 horses died in a fiery crash on a highway. 9 horses on the day of 110,000 deaths is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110, and from the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes judgment. One of the 9 horses that died in the fiery crash on the day of 110,000 coronavirus deaths on Pentecost was sired by Triple Crown winner American Pharaoh, a horse that God used to point to the American Antichrist, as Pharaoh in Egypt, who persecuted the Jews in Egypt, was a prophetic type for the Antichrist. Horses and Egypt point to the book of Isaiah chapter 31 that describes the Antichrist's defeat in Jerusalem at the return of the Messiah at the end of the end times period, and this chapter begins with the passage, quote, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses," unquote. Upon becoming president, the 44th president went down to Egypt to deliver his famous Cairo, Egypt speech in order to tell the Muslim world America is no longer a Christian nation. Exactly 9 weeks after the fiery highway crash and the death of 9 horses was the day a horse buggy filled with 7 Mennonites crashed on the highway in Jerusalem, New York State. 2 of the 7 Mennonites, and only 2 of the 7 Mennonites, suffered serious injuries and had to be rushed to a hospital 50 miles away. 2 of the 7 Mennonites, and only 2 of the 7 Mennonites, a 7-year-old and a 7-month-old, suffered serious injury and had to be rushed to the hospital 50 miles away. The number 50 symbolizes Pentecost. 7 Mennonites and a 7-year-old and a 7-month-old gives us 3 sevens, which hints at the 3 sets of 7 judgments in the end times period that are described in the book of Revelation. 110 days before the fiery crash of 9 horses on Pentecost, which is symbolized by fire, which is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110 that hints at 9/11, was the day of the fiery crash in the Daytona 500 of Ryan Newman. Ryan in Irish means king, and his car number was 6, which symbolizes the Antichrist. The 500th word in Strong's Concordance in the Greek New Testament is the word for Antichrist, and this fiery crash at the Daytona 500 was in turn 110 days after the barge moved for the first time since the year of the Spanish flu pandemic, which hinted at the COVID virus hysteria false religion. And the day the barge moved was also the day that the Maria fire began, which burned 9,999 acres. which was yet another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110 that hint at 9/11. 9 horses on the day of 110,000 deaths is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110. One of the race horses that died was sired by Triple Crown winner American Pharoah. The 44th president's birthday, on the day of the Indonesian blackout that killed 4 people, was 50 days after the blackout of 44 million people in Argentina, and it was 50 months after King James scored 44 points, and it was 44 days before the 4th wettest storm in Texas history that dumped 4 feet of water on the 4th biggest city over 4 days, and the 44th president's birthday was 44 weeks before Pentecost and the death of the horse sired by American Pharoah. Pharaoh in Egypt was a type for the Antichrist who persecuted the Hebrews in Egypt. On the first Pentecost, on the 50th day of the Hebrews' exodus from Egypt, smoke and fire came down on Mount Sinai. In turn, 44 weeks after the death of the horse that was sired by American Pharoah in a fiery crash on Pentecost, was the day that smoke and fire erupted from the volcanic mountain on the island of St. Vincent, and its residents in Kingston woke up to a layer of ash covering their homes and streets. A prince is king symbolism, and on the day of the eruption near Kingston, Prince Philip died at the age of 99. Every media story mentioned how the island of St. Vincent has a population of 110,000, and that the ash was traveling 110 miles to the island of Barbados. This, in conjunction with the death of Prince Philip at the age of 99, was yet another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110 that confirms the signs and hints at the 9/11 judgment warning. In these signs, 99-year-old Prince Philip and the city of Kingston are Antichrist king symbolism, and these signs occurred 2 sets of 44 weeks after the 44th president's prophetic birthday. The number 50 symbolizes Pentecost, and Pentecost symbolizes the church. The number 500 symbolizes the Antichrist, who will persecute the church. 500 days back from Pentecost on June 7th, 2020, on which 9 horses died in a fiery crash, one of which was sired by American Pharoah, was the day the racehorse named Justify won the award for Horse of the Year at the annual Eclipse Awards. Justify won the Triple Crown in 2018. The number 144 is a prominent and prophetic number in the book of Revelation regarding the end times. Justify won the 144th Kentucky Derby at 7 minutes to 7 p.m., and his number was 7. Thus giving us a 3 sets of 7 sign that pointed to the 3 sets of 7 judgments in the end times period that are described in the book of Revelation. The awards ceremony for the horse race industry happens to be named Eclipse, and Genesis 1:14 tells us that the lights in the sky are for prophetic signs. The 2 brightest lights in the sky are the sun and the moon, hence why their perfect alignment relative to the earth can be prophetic. The reason we have perfect eclipses is due to something that astronomers call the grand coincidence, which is that the sun just happens to be exactly 400 times further away from the moon and also 400 times bigger, thus giving us perfect eclipses. And as far as we know, this is the only place in the universe that has perfect eclipses. But the even grander coincidence is that, like Roman letters, the Hebrew alphabet is also numbers, and the last letter, the letter Tav, is the letter for the number 400, and also each letter is also a symbol for something, and the last letter is the symbol for prophetic signs. Therefore, whoever created the Hebrew alphabet also created eclipses, and also therefore the number 400 is associated with eclipses, and this horse Justify that won the Eclipse Award is pointing to American Pharoah, and Pharaoh in Egypt persecuted the Hebrews in Egypt for 400 years. The horse Justify and American Pharoah were the only 2 horses to win the Triple Crown since 1978. American Pharaoh hints at the American Antichrist, Barack Obama, and Justify hints at the Justifier, Jesus Christ, that will rescue God's faithful from the Antichrist in the rapture event. This is why on the same day that Justify won the Eclipse Award, a rare 3.8 magnitude earthquake hit downtown Nazareth in Israel, the town that Jesus grew up in. When asked by his disciples for the signs to look for, Jesus replied with the metaphor of birth pains in context of earthquake signs. According to the medical profession, the average human gestation period is 40 weeks. This is why 40 weeks connections are extremely prophetic, especially in the context of an earthquake sign. Exactly 40 weeks after the earthquake in Nazareth, on the day Justify won the Eclipse Award, was the day that the historic barge on the Niagara River moved for the first time since World War I and the Spanish flu pandemic, which was the same day that the Maria fire began, which burned 9,999 acres. In the Bible, Joshua and Joseph were types for Jesus, and they both died at the age of 110. 110 also symbolizes earthquake judgment, as Joshua led the Hebrews around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho before they collapsed in judgment from God due to an earthquake. 110 days after the barge moved for the first time, on the day that the Maria fire burned 9,999 acres, was the day of the fiery crash in the Daytona 500, which was in turn 110 days to Pentecost and 110,000 deaths, and the day of the fiery crash involving 9 horses, one of which was sired by American Pharaoh. In the Bible, a period of 20 years symbolizes a perfect period or complete period. In God's signs, 20 years connections are extremely prophetic, and exactly 20 years before the barge moved and the Maria fire began burning 9,999 acres was the day that Egypt Air Flight 990 crashed off the U.S. East Coast en route to Cairo, Egypt. This crash was a going down to Egypt sign, which pointed to the Antichrist Barack Obama, who went down to Egypt right after becoming president. It also pointed to Barack Obama becoming the American Pharaoh after a plane crash, the plane crash of Kamala Harris. This exact 20 years connection from the day that Egypt Air Flight 990 crashed connects to the 31st day of the month, which hints at the 31st chapter of Isaiah that describes the Antichrist being defeated by Lord Jesus Christ at the second coming, and begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses." On this Egypt Air Flight 990, there were 203 passengers, which hinted at the number 23 and the basketball president who wore jersey number 23. God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together in his signs in order to confirm his signs and connections, because from the Bible, they both symbolize judgment, and paired together, they point to Barack Obama. This is why there were 203 passengers on Egypt Air Flight 990. God uses the number 23 to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. In the Old Testament in the Bible, it is described how 2 goats were used on the Day of Atonement in the ritual on the Temple Mount. In Bible prophecy, there are 2 antichrists, and in Bible prophecy, it is said that the Antichrist will rule the Temple Mount during the end times period, and the Antichrist will be vanquished from the Temple Mount at the return of Lord Jesus Christ on the Day of Atonement in 2024. Goat is Antichrist symbolism. Goat stands for greatest of all time. And this is why the 2 goats of basketball wore jersey number 23, Michael Jordan and LeBron James. The GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan, played for Chicago, and the GOAT Antichrist, the basketball president, is from Chicago. LeBron James is famous for being from Cleveland and having played for Cleveland and having won the NBA Finals championship for Cleveland, breaking the supposed Cleveland sports curse, which is Antichrist King symbolism, which is why LeBron James goes by the nickname King James. And this was used to point to the president Grover Cleveland, who was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, skipping the 23rd presidency, just like the Antichrist will serve non-consecutive terms, having skipped the 45th presidency. This is why Michael Jordan, in the exact middle of his career, after having won 3 NBA titles and before winning his other 3 NBA titles, retired briefly, and when he returned, wore jersey number 45 for coincidentally 23 games. And it is why Michael Jordan, in his last game as a Chicago Bull, another city God uses to point to the Antichrist, who is also from Chicago, scored 45 points against the team from the 45th state. Like Michael Jordan, LeBron James also played in Cleveland, then famously left Cleveland in much controversy, and then returned again to play a second time in Cleveland in order to win the championship for Cleveland and break the Cleveland sports curse, which symbolizes the Antichrist curse of Barack Obama when he will return to the White House for his second presidency in October 2022. When LeBron James returned for his second time to Cleveland, it took him 2 years to win the NBA championship. Just like when Barack Obama will return to the White House, he will be president for the 2 years leading up to the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ in 2024. God frequently pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections and to reveal the identity of the Antichrist. Barack Obama, the basketball president that wore jersey number 23, became president in 2009. From the Bible, the numbers 9 and 23 both symbolize judgment, and the number 23 is the 9th prime number. The only grandfather-grandson presidents were the 9th and 23rd presidents, William and Benjamin Harrison. The 9th president, William Harrison, died on the calendar date April 4th, 44, which hints at the 44th president. Harrison died exactly 1 month after his inauguration. The name Harrison hints at Kamala Harris, who will die in a plane crash exactly 1 year after she visited President Giamatti in Guatemala, which was almost exactly 5 months after she became acting vice president, which hints at the exact 1 month between the inauguration of President Harrison and his death. President Giamatti hints at Bartlett Giamatti. The 7th Commissioner of Baseball, Bartlett Giamatti, died exactly 5 months after he became commissioner, and Bartlett Giamatti was born exactly 97 years after President Harrison died. The prophetic significance of all of this is explained in other videos. President Cleveland was the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, having skipped the 23rd presidency of Benjamin Harrison, just as Obama will serve non-consecutive terms after he will replace Kamala Harris. Michelle Obama will first replace Kamala Harris, and then Barack will replace Michelle. Michelle is the feminine version of Michael, which is the reason for the name Michael in the name Michael Jordan. In the Bible, the Hebrews crossed the Jordan River into the Promised Land. Barack Obama's famous autobiography is named A Promised Land. Obama the Antichrist will promise the world a new world order utopia. A goat is Antichrist symbolism. The greatest of all time, the GOAT of basketball, Michael Jordan, wore jersey number 23 and jersey number 9 when he played for the U.S. Olympic Dream Team, a team that beat their opponents by an average of 44 points per game, which hints at the 44th president, GOAT Antichrist, that wore jersey number 23 and became president in 2009. If you have not already watched the Michael Jordan prophecy video on this channel, I either recommend pausing this video here, watch the Michael Jordan video, and then come back, or watch the Michael Jordan prophecy video right after watching this video. The Michael Jordan prophecy video is an essential video for foundational understanding of how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. Exactly 20 years after Egypt Air Flight 990 went down on its way to Egypt was the day the Maria fire began burning 9,999 acres on the day that the barge moved. The number 9 symbolizes judgment. Jesus gave us the metaphor of birth pains for his signs to watch for. The average human gestation period is 9 months, and exactly 9 months prior to the Maria fire that burned 9,999 acres was the day that the Dow Jones closed at 24,999.67. It was 0.33 points away from an even 25,000. 14 times in Bible prophecy, the number 25,000 is associated with the Temple Mount in Jerusalem that the Antichrist will rule in the end times. And the point 67 hints at 1967, the year the Jews recaptured the Temple Mount. The day the Dow closed at 24,999.67 was the prophetic 70th anniversary of U.S. de jure recognition of the government of Israel. The Jews were exiled to Babylon for 70 years. The fig tree prophecy tells us that the end times will begin within a generation of the restoration of Israel. Psalm 90:10 tells us that a generation is 70 years. President Trump, God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet his signs, became president at the age of 70 years, 7 months, and 7 days old, and opened the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem on May 14th, 2018, Israel's 70th anniversary, and the Temple Mount was destroyed by the Romans in 70 AD. This date, January 31st, 2019, was in turn exactly 110 weeks after UN Resolution 2334, which was orchestrated by Barack Obama behind the scenes just before he left office and condemned Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem where the Temple Mount is. This 110 weeks connection to the day of 24,999 points in the Dow is yet another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110. This pairing of 110 weeks and 9 months is also a pairing of 9 and 110 that confirms the signs and hints at 9/11. In turn, this UN resolution was exactly 9 months prior to the date 9/23 in 2017 and the day that the great sign in heaven that is described in Revelation chapter 12 was depicted in the night sky. This sign depicts a woman giving birth, and 9 months symbolizes a period before giving birth. This sign in Revelation chapter 12 also describes the Antichrist and the beginning of the Antichrist's period of rule, which begins immediately following the birth, which is why this UN resolution that points to Barack Obama occurred exactly 9 months before this Revelation 12 sign that depicts a birth. Also, again, the number 23 points to Barack Obama, as does the number 34, which is explained in other videos. And that's why this UN resolution is numbered 2334. And God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together because they both symbolize judgment and they both paired together point to Barack Obama. And that's why this UN resolution was on the 23rd of the month, 9 months exactly before the 23rd of September in 2017, and the Revelation 12 rapture sign. The Revelation 12 rapture sign is about a rescue of God's faithful from the coming persecution of the Antichrist, and the number 90 symbolizes the number 9, which symbolizes judgment, and that's why this Revelation 12 rapture rescue sign occurred exactly 90 months after Obamacare was passed. Obamacare was passed on the 23rd day of the month, and this paired with this 90 months connection is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 23 that confirm the signs and connections and point to Barack Obama. In this trail of signs, Obamacare that was passed on March 23rd, 2010 connects with 90 months to the Revelation 12 Rapture Rescue sign, which in turn connects with exactly 110 weeks to the day that the barge moved on the Niagara River for the first time since the year of Spanish flu. This 90 months and 110 weeks connection paired together confirms the signs and connections and hints at 9/11, and this trail of signs from Obamacare to the Niagara barge, which points to Spanish flu, is a stunning trail of signs that confirms that healthcare is part of the Antichrist's persecution. It is stunning confirmation that the Antichrist will use the COVID flu virus and the vaccine through nationalized healthcare to persecute the church. And this is why the Revelation 12 Rapture Rescue sign is situated in the middle of this trail of signs. There are more second witness confirmations to this trail of signs. The Revelation chapter 12 Rapture Rescue sign that was fulfilled on September 23, 2017, was also the same night as the emergency evacuation of 70,000 residents of Puerto Rico in the middle of the night due to the threat of the dam bursting its waters because of damage caused by Hurricane Maria. And prior to Hurricane Maria hitting Puerto Rico, the media had reported how Hurricane Maria had been dancing with Hurricane Jose, Spanish for Mary and Joseph, in the open Atlantic. The dam bursting its waters symbolized a woman's water breaking before giving birth, and this threat of this dam's waters bursting due to Hurricane Maria occurred on the night of the Revelation 12 sign, which depicted a birth. Because the electric power was out, this required people knock on the residents' doors, which made this a rescue. A prophetic 70,000 people were evacuated. The threat of the dam bursting its waters is Noah's flood symbolism, and so is this barge on the Niagara River. Niagara Falls represents the power of water moving over the earth. The falls engenders a perennial rainbow. And when the barge got stuck in 1918, the year of Spanish flu, it was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls. The U.S. Coast Guard shot a lifeline to the two men that were trapped on the barge. This symbolized the rescue of Noah and his family from the impending judgment destruction. The barge symbolizes Noah's Ark. The account of Noah's flood in the book of Genesis tells us that the flood waters lifted the ark high above the earth, which is symbolism for the rapture of God's faithful when they will meet the Lord in the sky. On the day that the barge moved for the first time, the Maria fire began burning 9,999 acres. This is why an exact 110 weeks connects the Maria fire and the Niagara barge to the dam damaged by Hurricane Maria and the Revelation 12 Rapture Rescue sign. The word for rapture in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance is the 726th word. G726 is the word for rapture. In God's signs, the number 726 symbolizes this and the rapture. This barge that symbolizes the rapture and the rescue of God's faithful from the persecution through nationalized health care and the vaccine will crash over Niagara Falls on the date 7/26, July 26th, 2022. 7/26, July 26th hints at the number 726, the number for the word rapture. And again, this barge got stuck during the peak of the Spanish flu pandemic. This barge will crash over Niagara Falls and will be the big judgment warning sign that the end times is about to get very chaotic, and the rapture will be 2 months after this in September. This barge will crash over Niagara Falls 999 days after the Maria fire began burning 9,999 acres on the same prophetic day that the barge moved for the first time since it got stuck during Spanish flu. Returning back to the date that Obamacare was signed into law, the signature legislature that the Obama presidency is known for. In other words, Obama is synonymous with Obamacare. It is the big thing of his presidency. And the date that it was passed was on the 23rd of the month, and God uses the 23rds of months to point to the basketball president that wore jersey number 23. And again, this Obamacare was passed exactly 90 months, which hints at the number 9, which is the most important number in God's big picture of signs. It symbolizes judgment. Obama signed this legislature exactly 90 months before the Revelation 12 rapture sign was fulfilled in the night sky. And God pairs the numbers 9 and 110 together. And again, the Revelation 12 rapture sign is followed with 110 weeks, as was just explained. But this 90 months also pairs with 110 months, because exactly 110 months after Obamacare was passed was May 23rd, 2019, which was an extremely prophetic date, and it has been explained in much detail in other videos, including the must-watch World Series Blood Moon Prophecy video. This World Series Blood Moon Prophecy video is one of the most important videos. It is a must-watch video that contains specific messages that must be known. And so I won't explain it again here, what happened on May 23rd, but it was the day that Obama tweeted how he had visited the Washington Nationals, which hints at the nationalized health care. He visited the Washington Nationals Youth Academy, and the youth, the students, were seen kneeling in front of Obama, which symbolized kneeling to Satan. It was also the day of the extremely prophetic tornado warning for Washington, D.C., that occurred exactly at the moment that the Senate was voting on the disaster relief bill, which was for the hurricane disasters that occurred immediately following the extremely prophetic Great American Eclipse Judgment Warning sign. In other words, the disastrous hurricanes in 2017 were second witness confirmations to the Great American Eclipse Judgment Warning sign. And speaking of second witness confirmations, which is what is said is required to confirm a matter in the Bible, this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And what makes this that is being explained on this channel true and different and unique than other things is that it works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming matters, as can be clearly seen in this diagram here, for example. And May 23rd was also the day that SpaceX launched its first 60 Starlink satellites. The Antichrist Barack Obama will become Antichrist. He will become president again and Antichrist at the age of 60. And 60 hints at the number 6, which is the Antichrist's number. The number 666 is associated with the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. And this is why on Obama's 60th birthday occurred the 6.0 magnitude earthquake 110 miles from the Olympics that were being held at that time in Tokyo, which hints at Obama becoming the Antichrist ruler of a new incarnation of the United Nations. The 6.0 hints at the age of 60, and it was on Obama's 60th birthday. Anyway, returning back to SpaceX's launch of 60 satellites, SpaceX also announced at that time that it would launch 44 satellites on average per month, which hints at the 44th president. And these Starlink satellites will be used to activate the VACCINE and induce demonic possession. Somehow, the Starlink satellites will serve the function of the VACCINE mark of the Antichrist, for tracking people or for some technological purpose involved in the process of activating the components that are delivered into the body through the VACCINE, nanotechnology robots that self-assemble into synthetic neurons that use swarm robotics technology to disperse themselves evenly throughout the brain. that will function as antennae that will receive frequency signals from the 5G network, and possibly also receive Starlink satellite signals that will cause the brain's waves to synchronize into delta wave patterns that will induce demonic possession, that will lead to a zombie pandemic involving genocide that will resemble Rwanda. Starlink launched its first 60 satellites on the same day as the prophetic tornado warning, which was exactly 110 weeks before the tornado touched down in Washington, D.C. on July 1st, 2021, that traveled 4.4 miles and touched down at 9 p.m. and had maximum wind speeds of 90 miles per hour, which paired together with the 110 weeks connection to the prophetic tornado warning that was exactly 110 months after Obama signed his Obamacare. In turn, exactly 110 days after the tornado touched down at 9 p.m. and had maximum wind speeds of 90 miles per hour, which is a pairing of 9 and 110 that confirms the signs and connections. Exactly 110 days after this July 1st, 2021 date was October 19th. And the prophetic sign that we received on that day, the plane crash, I will explain in just a second. But that date in turn, October 19th, which by the way also hints at 9/11, 10/19 gives us 2 ones and the number 9. And on 9/11, it was the towers that collapsed, and that hinted at Genesis 11:9, the Tower of Babel. But anyway, October 19th was in turn exactly 40 weeks before July 26th, 2022, and the day that the barge will crash over Niagara Falls. And so this plane crash connects with 40 weeks to the day that the barge will crash. And when his disciples asked him for the signs of his return to look for, Jesus used the metaphor of birth pains. And according to the medical profession, the average human gestation period is 40 weeks, hence why 40 weeks connections are extremely prophetic in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. In a minute, I will explain why God frequently pairs the numbers 9 and 110 together to confirm the signs and connections and to point to 9/11. 110 days after the tornado that touched down in Washington, D.C. at 9 p.m. and had maximum wind speeds of 90 miles per hour was October 19th. Not only does this pairing of the numbers 110 and 9 hint at 9/11, but so does the date October 19th itself. October 19th, 10/19, gives us 2 ones, which hints at 11, and the number 9. On October 19th, a McDonnell Douglas Model MD-87 plane crashed that was registered to a company named 987 Investments LLC. This was 87 days before Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, and the number 9 symbolizes judgment. One theory for why this plane crashed is a bird strike, and Kamala Harris's plane will crash due to a bird strike. The plane was leaving Houston. Houston is Harris County, which hints at Kamala Harris. It took Harris County Hazmat and Fire over an hour to put out the fire that essentially incinerated the plane. Houston is the 4th biggest city in America, and a city God has used to symbolize the number 4. For example, 4 days after the Great American Eclipse Judgment Warning sign, Category 4 Hurricane Harvey dumped 4 feet of water on the 4th biggest city in the U.S., Houston, over 4 days. As well, the Sign of Jonah sign and John the Baptist sign, which was Brother Philip's 10 cities in 10 days call to repentance, preparing the way for the Lord, Philip's 4th city was Houston. This plane was on its way to Game 4 of the Houston Astros playoff game in Boston. This hinted at the 44th president who will replace Kamala Harris. This plane that crashed as it was leaving the 4th biggest city on its way to Game 4 occurred 110 days after the tornado in Washington, D.C. that traveled 4.4 miles. In advance of October 19th, a major sign such as this plane crash was expected. One reason being is that October 19th was 36,144 days after the discovery of King Tut's tomb. I explained the relevance of the number 36,144 in one of the videos on this channel. Arguably, the biggest reason for expecting a major sign on this October 19th date is that October 19th was the 34th anniversary of the stock market crash in 1987 known as Black Monday. This plane registered to a financial company named 987 was the 34th anniversary of Black Monday in 1987. In a few of the videos on this channel, I explain the extremely important relevance of the number 34 and why the number 34 is extremely relevant in this connection. October 19th was 110 days after the tornado touched down in Washington, D.C. at 9 p.m. with maximum wind speeds of 90 miles per hour. And October 19th was exactly 110 weeks after the stock market sign we received on 9/11 in 2019. On this day, the Dow gained 227 points, which hinted at the age of George Washington's famous tree that he planted. This tree fell at the age of 227 years old on the same day as Billy Graham's prophetic funeral. In the Bible, fallen trees symbolize spiritual death and God's judgment. As explained before, God pointed to George Washington through the 9/11 events. And as was explained, God pointed to George Washington through a tree. The 70-year-old sycamore tree that sheltered Trinity Chapel, the only building that survived the falling debris at Ground Zero without even a broken window, the church in which Washington consecrated the nation to God after his inauguration as the nation's first president. Washington said if the nation were to ever turn away from God, it would lose its blessings. As well, on 9/11 in 2019, the S&P 500 stock market index closed at 3,000.93 points. In the Bible, quote, about 3,000, unquote, people perished after their rebellion at Mount Sinai. On 9/11, it was about 3,000 people that died. The official death toll is 2,996. The .93 in the S&P number hints at Flight 93 that crashed into a field in Pennsylvania on 9/11. 44 people died in the Flight 93 crash, and this is why this prophetic stock market sign that points to Flight 93 occurred exactly 110 weeks before the plane crash in the fourth biggest city in the U.S. that was on its way to the Houston Astros Game 4 in the playoff series against Boston. This plane crash was in Harris County, and the 44th president will become president again after the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. This stock market sign on 9/11 in 2019 occurred exactly 6 times 6 times 6 months after 9/11 in 2001 and the day that Flight 93 crashed. 6 times 6 times 6 months is also 18 years, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6 years. On 9/11 in 2001, 110 stories of the World Trade Center collapsed, which is why the stock market sign on 9/11 in 2019 occurred exactly 110 weeks before the crash of the plane that was owned by 987 Investments. This MD-87 model plane that was owned by 987 Investments LLC on the 34th anniversary of the 1987 Black Monday stock market crash was one of many, many clues that were pointing to January 14th, which is 87 days after this MD-87 plane crashed that was owned by 987 Investments LLC on the 34th anniversary of the Black Monday stock market crash in 1987. It was expected ahead of time that there would be prophetic signs on January 14th, or it would be the day that Kamala Harris's plane would crash. And on that day, as explained in the absolute must-watch American Pharaoh Prophecy video, we received a prophetic plane crash sign. We also received a major prophetic sign involving the number 144, which was also expected in advance of January 14th. And sure enough, the prophetic sign involving 144 horses confirmed the analysis and also confirmed adding 144 days to January 14th to get June 7th, and the day of the prophetic signs that revealed that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash due to a bird strike on July 20th. All of this amazing information is explained in the absolute must-watch American Pharaoh Prophecy video and the January 6 Hearings Prophecy video. And so this amazing prophetic sign involving this plane crash in Harris County connects with 87 days to the prophetic plane crash in Utah and the 144 horses in Colorado. And the symbolism in the high places here is explained in the American Pharaoh Prophecy video. And that day in turn connects with 144 days to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. As was explained, this date that this plane crashed in Harris County was 10/19, which hinted at 11, and 9, which hinted at 9/11, which is why it occurred 110 days after the tornado touched down at 9 p.m. that had maximum wind speeds of 90 miles per hour, which, as will be explained, was 110 weeks after the prophetic tornado warning in Washington, D.C., which in turn was 110 months exactly after Barack Obama signed his most important legislature, which was his Obamacare. And again, this date 10/19, which hints at 9/11, was exactly 110 weeks after the stock market sign on 9/11 that pointed to 9/11. And one major reason for all of this 110 and 9/11 symbolism in these signs on 10/19 in 2021, which is connecting to the day that Kamala Harris's plane will crash, is that her plane will crash 110 days before September 24th, 2022, and the day of a catastrophic solar flare coronal mass ejection storm that will hit Earth. And it will fulfill Revelation chapter 8, verse 7. Which is the reason for the 87 number in these signs. The 34th anniversary of the stock market crash in 1987 is hinting at the coronal mass ejection that will crash to Earth. And that's also why the McDonnell Douglas MD-87 that was owned by 987 Investments, LLC. 987 Investments, LLC, which was 87 days before the prophetic signs on January 14th, including the plane crash. The crash of the plane in Harris County was in turn exactly 62 weeks after Joe Biden nominated Kamala Harris to be his vice president on August 11th, 2020. In the most central prophecy in the Bible, in Daniel chapter 9, there is a period of 69 weeks that is broken into 62 weeks and 7 weeks. And this is why it is truly amazing that it is exactly 62 weeks from the day that Joe Biden first announced Kamala Harris to the crash in Harris County, a prophetic plane crash which is pointing to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. Now, again, prior to October 19th, 10/19, it was expected in advance that there would be something to do with the stock market on this day. And again, the reason for this was because I knew ahead of time that it was the 34th anniversary of the 1987 Black Monday stock market crash. And again, it is explained elsewhere the importance of the number 34 and how, in fact, it connects with 9/11, which is again what this date is symbolizing. This 10-19 date hints at 11, and 9, which hints at 9/11. And again, it was exactly 110 weeks after the extremely prophetic stock market sign on 9/11 in 2019, which, as explained, pointed to 9/11. This is why it was expected in advance that there would be a stock market sign on December 7th. December 7th is exactly 7 weeks after 10/19, which is again exactly 62 weeks after Joe Biden announced tariffs. And so Joe Biden announced tariffs 62 weeks to the plane crash in Harris County, and then 7 weeks to December 7th. The reason why that is important is because 62 weeks and 7 weeks makes up the prophetic 69 weeks described in Daniel chapter 9, the most central prophecy in the Bible. The 70th week symbolizes the end times period, which is why God uses 69 weeks connections in his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. Another reason why it was known ahead of time that December 7th would be important is that God uses the date December 7, 12:7, to point to Revelation chapter 12:7, which begins with, "Now war arose in heaven, Michael and his angels fighting against the dragon. And the dragon and his angels fought back, but he was defeated, and there was no longer any place for them in heaven. And the great dragon was thrown down, that ancient serpent who is called the devil and Satan, the deceiver of the whole world. He was thrown down to earth, and his angels were thrown down with him." This Revelation 12:7 passage begins with, "And now war broke out in heaven," or it says, "Now war arose in heaven," which is why World War II began on 12/7, December 7th, which was when the Japanese attacked America at Pearl Harbor, which then led to America entering the war. In other words, war broke out on 12/7, and that's what's said in Revelation 12:7. And so now I will explain the amazing prophetic sign we received on 12/7, a stock market sign that was expected in advance. On this date, 12/7, the Dow closed at 35,719 points. If we subtract 35,719 points from December 7th, 2021, we get February 21st, 1924. This was the day that the movie America was first shown for the first time ever at the famous 44th Street Theater. This was a famous theater on 44th Street in Manhattan. This was a silent, historical war romance film. It describes the heroic story of the events during the American Revolutionary War. It was created and adapted by famous filmmaker D.W. Griffith and was an adaptation of a 1905 novel, The Reckoning. The plot mainly centers itself on the northern theater of the war in New York, with romance spliced into the individual movie scenes. All right, now, as I just said, 12/7, the date 12/7 hints at war, which is why World War II broke out on this day. This movie is about the American Revolutionary War, and it's adapted from a book named The Reckoning, which is hinting at judgment on America. The title of the movie is America, most importantly. It's titled America, giving this America symbolism. The movie was also called Love and Sacrifice, which gives this Christian and Jesus symbolism. God is communicating through his big picture of signs, judgment on America, and primarily through the Antichrist, the 44th president, which is why we can know that this is a prophetic sign, this first ever showing of this movie named America, because it was first shown at the famous 44th Street Theater. The name of the theater is 44th Street, and so this is clearly pointing to the 44th president. The 44th Street Theater was a Broadway theater located at 216 West 44th Street in New York between 1912 and 1945. 216 West 44th Street is absolutely astounding because the 44th president was born on the 216th day of the year, August 4th. 216 is 6 times 6 times 6, And this is a stunning confirmation that the 44th president is the Antichrist. Because, of course, in Bible prophecy, the number 666 is associated with the Antichrist. But much more than this 44th Street Theater was also the location of the famous small nightclub that was in the basement of the 44th Street Theater. It was used during Prohibition, and then in March of 1942, the small club became the original Stage Door Canteen, which operated throughout World War II. This club became the subject of a popular film and inspired other canteens throughout the United States. The Stage Door Canteen was an entertainment venue for American and Allied servicemen that operated in the Broadway Theater District of New York throughout World War II. Founded by the American Theater Wing in 1942, the entertainers were largely unpaid, volunteering their talents as a way of supporting the morale of American troops during the war. In other words, this is a very historic place associated with World War II, and as I just said, God uses the date 12/7 as symbolism, and America entered World War II on the date 12/7, and so God is pointing to this Stage Door Canteen in the basement of the 44th Street Theater, which first played the movie America 35,719 days before the date 12/7 in 2021, when the Dow Jones Stock Market Industrial Average closed at 35,719 points. And there is also a match between the movie and the Stage Door Canteen, because the movie was also about the important American Revolutionary War. In other words, we are talking about these pivotal moments in American history, a country that God has had his hand on throughout its history and is now giving it judgment warning of destruction. And so we have this amazing connection between the date 12/7 in 2021 and this 44th Street Theater and the movie America and the Stage Door Canteen, the famous location during World War II. And World War II broke out on the date 12/7 in 1941. This stock market sign, when the Dow closed at 35,719 points on 12/7/2021, was the 80th anniversary of Pearl Harbor Day, when the Japanese attacked Pearl Harbor when war broke out on 12/7 in 1941. And the reason for this is because of Revelation chapter 12:7. When war broke out in heaven and the archangel Michael threw the dragon and his angels down from heaven to earth at the symbolic beginning of the end times tribulation period of the Antichrist, the dragon. And this is to identify who the dragon is, which is the 44th president, which is why this connection to the 44th Street Theater on 216 West 44th Street. The 44th president was born on the 216th day of the year, and 216 is 6 times 6 times 6. And Revelation chapter 13 describes this dragon that gives his power to the first Antichrist and speaks on authority of the first Antichrist, which is Pope Francis. We have a clear identification of the dragon, which is also known as the false prophet in Revelation chapter 13. So this movie was first played on February 21st, 1924. The following day was February 22nd, which was George Washington's birthday. On this day, President Coolidge gave the first ever radio address from the White House. This was 35,719 days inclusive count to 12/7/2021. This is important because the last scene in the movie America, which was first shown at 216 44th Street in Manhattan, depicted Washington's inauguration in Manhattan. The last scene of this movie America depicted Washington's inauguration in Manhattan. And as I have already explained, God pointed to Washington's inauguration in Manhattan through the 9/11 events. The biggest judgment warning event, which was the events of 9/11 and 2001, were pointing to Washington's inauguration. And through these signs, this trail of signs that I've just explained, God used this movie to also point to Washington's inauguration. In Bible prophecy, in Daniel chapter 8, a period of 2,300 days is associated with the Antichrist. The day that Joe Biden announced that Harris would be his running mate was in turn exactly 2,300 days after a disoriented 81-year-old man crashed his SUV into customers, killing one person, at a Farrell's ice cream shop in California, the state that Harris is from. In Bible prophecy, a period of 2,300 days is associated with the timing of the Antichrist. The absolute must-watch Jeopardy Trebek prophecy video explains how this disoriented man in the Farrell ice cream shop sign is pointing to the disoriented old man Biden, who is well known for loving ice cream and wearing aviator sunglasses on trips with the media to ice cream shops. And the Jeopardy Trebek prophecy video explains how this connects to the jet plane that crashed into a Farrell's ice cream shop in California in 1972 that killed 23 people, which pointed to the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 and will return to power through the death of Harris in a plane crash. The SUV crash into the ice cream shop in 2014 connects with exactly 2,300 days, and then exactly 62 weeks, and then 87 days, to the day of the prophetic plane crash and the 144 horses sign on January 14th, which in turn is 144 days to the day that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on June 7th. Obama's old pal, the aviator, sunglass-wearing, ice cream shop-loving president, will appoint Obama as her replacement, and then because he is a disoriented old man, he will step aside and allow Obama to become president again. Also, in archaic English, the word Trump means trumpet, or the sounding of a trumpet. President Trump is God's trumpet that he uses to trumpet and highlight his signs. This trumpeting of President Trump is often done through prophetic tweets. On September 23rd, Obamacare was in the news when Trump posted his 2 tweets condemning Republican Senator John McCain for casting the deciding vote to not repeal Obamacare. Trump's prophetic tweet regarding the repeal of Obamacare on the day of the Rapture Rescue sign confirms that Obamacare symbolizes the persecution of the church with the VACCINE through Barack Obama, and this is why this connects with exactly 90 months to the day Obamacare was passed. Also, we know from Bible prophecy that the Antichrist will rule the Temple Mount in East Jerusalem in Israel in the end times period, and this is why this prophetic UN Resolution 2334, which condemned Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem near the Temple Mount, connects with exactly 110 weeks to the 70th de jure anniversary of the recognition of Israel on the day the Dow closed at 24,999.67, which hinted at the Temple Mount. This Revelation chapter 12 sign occurred on the same day as the emergency evacuation of 70,000 people in the middle of the night in Puerto Rico, which is Spanish America, due to the threat of the dam bursting that was the result of damage caused by Hurricane Maria. The emergency evacuation in Spanish America due to Hurricane Maria was exactly 110 weeks prior to the Maria fire that burned 9,999 acres on the day that the barge moved for the first time since the Spanish flu, which is yet another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110 that hint at 9/11. And this connection also confirms that COVID is judgment from God that the Antichrist will use, from which God's faithful will need to be rescued in an emergency evacuation in the rapture event, which is what the Revelation 12 sign depicts. This is also why, from the stock market sign on January 31st, 2019, which was 9 months before the Maria fire began burning 9,999 acres, is exactly 110 weeks, which is another pairing of 9 and 110 that confirms the signs and connections, as does 110 weeks paired with the Dow close at 24,999.67 before the stock market sign we received on March 11th, 2021, the day that Joe Biden gave his first public address since taking over the White House, an address that was his VACCINE speech on a date that he labeled the anniversary of COVID, and the Dow gained 188 points. This was two important stock market signs connected with an exact, extremely prophetic 110 weeks. God uses the number 188 to communicate severe judgment warning, as the 188th word in the Hebrew Old Testament in Strong's Concordance, H188, is the word for woe! A word used in conjunction with severe judgment warning. In fact, Joe Biden's big VACCINE speech on March 11, 2021, on the day that the Dow gained 188 points, was exactly 9 months after the stock market sign on June 11, 2020, when the S&P 500 stock index lost 188 points and the Dow lost 1,861 points, which is 1861, which hints at the year 1861, the year that the Civil War began. And through this, God is communicating a civil war between the political left that has conflated their politics with religion, with their religious instinct, and has turned into a cult that is waging religious war that will persecute their enemy, conservatives and Christians, through the VACCINE. But they don't realize that they are in fact working for Satan. The S&P 500 stock index losing 188 points is a big deal. The S&P 500 itself hints at the Antichrist because the 500th Greek word in Strong's Concordance is the Greek word for Antichrist. This stock market sign occurred during the height of the Antichrist Black Lives Matter protests, in which people symbolically were kneeling to Satan. The day of Joe Biden's big VACCINE speech was on what he called the anniversary of COVID. It was a prophetic date. And the date 3/11, March 11th, also hints at Joe Biden because Joseph was the 11th son of the third patriarch, Jacob, who was renamed Israel. So the third patriarch's 11th son was Joseph, which hints at 3/11. And Joe Biden gave his big prophetic VACCINE speech on the date 3/11, the anniversary of COVID. And this was exactly 9 months after the other prophetic stock market sign that involved 188, which again is the word for woe! And this 9 months back from March 11th, 2021, pairs with the 110 weeks back from March 11th, 2021 to the 24,999 stock market number that hints at the Temple Mount on the 70th anniversary of the de jure recognition of Israel. I'm just going to take a quick minute here to explain more reasons for how it is known that the number 188 in God's signs symbolizes woe! H188 in Strong's Hebrew Concordance. Also, I forget if it was mentioned or not already, but 9 months connections are prophetic for more than just the fact that number 9 symbolizes judgment, and as we have seen in this diagram, pair with the number 110 that confirm the relevance of the 9 months connections in the diagram. But 9 months connections are also extremely prophetic because, again, Jesus replied to his disciples when they asked him for the signs to look for of his return. He replied with the metaphor of birth pains, and 9 months is the average human gestation period. And that's why, for example, this 9 months connection between when the S&P lost 188 points and the Dow gained 188 points on the day of the extremely prophetic Joe Biden's VACCINE speech is an extremely important and prophetic confirmation of a connection. In God's big picture of end times judgment, warning signs, patterns, and connections, God uses the number 188 because the 188th Hebrew word in Strong's Old Testament Concordance, H188, is the word woe! This word woe! Is used in context of judgment. For example, in his signs, it is exactly 188 years from the day the British landed at Washington's Mount Vernon estate on 9/11 in 1813 and burned down the White House and Capitol building to the only other time a foreign enemy attacked Washington, D.C. on 9/11, 2001. As well, from the upcoming Great American Eclipse in 2024, it will be 188 days to the Day of Atonement in 2024 and the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, which will be Judgment Day. There is no more appropriate connection than this involving the number 188. God uses the number 22 and series of 2 to symbolize the mark of the Antichrist, as the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist described in the Old Testament in Ezekiel chapter 9 would have been a Tav mark, and the Tav letter is the last letter in the Hebrew alphabet and is the 22nd letter. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the book of Revelation, which is the 22nd of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. This is why it is extremely relevant that exactly 222 days after Joe Biden's big prophetic VACCINE speech was October 19th and the day of the prophetic plane crash that has already been explained. And because this video's subject is the Suez Canal ship, Joe Biden's big prophetic VACCINE speech was 6 plus 6 plus 6 days before the Suez Canal ship finally broke free from clogging the world's trade artery, which symbolized what these VACCINEs do with the blood clotting. And the day the Suez Canal ship broke free was 66 days after the home run king, player number 44, Hank Aaron, died after taking the VACCINE 6 plus 6 plus 6 days earlier. God has used Hank Aaron in so many ways. There is so much to say, and he is using him to point to the VACCINE and identify it as the mark of the Antichrist. And much more will be explained and has been explained in other videos. God pairs the numbers 9 and 17 together to confirm the signs and connections and also to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, who was president from 2009 until 2017 and arrived in Washington, D.C. as the senator from Illinois in the 109th Congress, and while attending Columbia University lived on 109th Street and will return to the District of Columbia as the president in the 117th Congress. The numbers 9 and 17 are also paired together to point to the last verse of the account of the flood judgment in the Bible, Genesis 9:17. This verse regards God's sign regarding judgment, the rainbow. Niagara Falls is known for engendering a perennial rainbow. Niagara Falls and the historic barge that is stuck on the rocks of the Niagara River are also Noah's flood symbolism. As explained earlier, the Suez Canal ship that got stuck parallels and points to the historic barge that is stuck. And also, as explained earlier, one reason I knew in advance that God was pointing to the date March 29th is because it was 40 days after the date February 17th, 2021, and the Noah's flood symbolism signs that occurred on that date. In the account of the flood began on the 17th day of the second month, for which February 17th symbolizes, and the flood waters continued for 40 days. This is why Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash 9 months and 17 days after the Suez Canal ship became unstuck due to the moon tide. She will be replaced by the president that was president from 2009 until 2017. Again, the ship that clogged the world's shipping artery was symbolism for the clogged arteries and massive numbers of death that the VACCINE is causing and will increasingly cause. The corrupt and evil liberal mainstream media is lying and is both political cult and pharmaceutical industry propaganda. The Suez Canal ship became stuck on March 23rd, which is 9 months and 23 days before Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Again, God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and connections and to reveal the identity of the Antichrist. Therefore, both the date that the ship became stuck and the date that it became unstuck connect with the two ways in which God pairs numbers to identify Obama. Therefore, these connections are second witnesses to each other that confirm each other. Also, 7 times in Bible prophecy, it is said that the Antichrist's rule will be for a symbolic 42 months. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections has overwhelmingly confirmed that we are inside the last 42 months. The great sign in heaven described in Revelation chapter 12, which is the sign that symbolizes the rapture and the rescue of God's faithful from the coming judgment from the Antichrist, was fulfilled in the night sky on the date 9/23 in 2017. This 9/23 date reveals that the Antichrist is Obama that will persecute the church, and it is from this Antichrist that God's faithful will be rescued, which is again what the historic barge on the Niagara River symbolizes. It symbolizes Noah's Ark and was involved in the most dramatic rescue in the history of Niagara Falls. And again, the Suez Canal ship parallels this historic barge. Exactly 42 months after the rapture sign that depicts the rescue of God's faithful from the Antichrist's persecution was the day that the Suez Canal ship got stuck, which symbolizes clogged arteries from the VACCINE, which is the mark of the Antichrist that the Antichrist will use to persecute the church that is left behind after the rapture. And so the rescue rapture sign on the date 9/23 in 2017 connects with an extremely prophetic 42 months to the day that the ship got stuck on the Suez Canal, which in turn connects with 9 months and 23 days to the day that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash, which will lead to the rise of the Antichrist. From the Bible, the number 13 symbolizes the Antichrist, and November 4th, 2021, the date 11/4, will be the 13th anniversary of the election of the 44th president. The date 11/4 hints at 11 times 4 equals 44. This 11/4 date in 2021 will also be 36,160 days after the day that King Tut's tomb was discovered in the Valley of Kings in Egypt. This 36,160 days is also exactly 99 years, and the number 9 symbolizes judgment. And from the Bible, Pharaoh in Egypt is Antichrist king symbolism, and that's why King Tut's tomb in the Valley of Kings, and this connection is extremely prophetic. This connection to the 13th anniversary of the election of Barack Obama. From the Bible, the number 13 is Antichrist king symbolism. Shortly after Barack Obama became president, he went down to Cairo, Egypt to deliver his famous Cairo, Egypt speech. And while he was there, he was compared to King Tut and was being called the new King Tut of the world. And this is why just over 2 weeks before 11/4, I predicted that God would point to this number in the stock market. And then on this day, on 11/4, in the first minute of trading, the Dow Jones Index was at 36,160. And then it declined. And then it came up to meet exactly the level of 36,160 before then declining for the rest of the day. The exact minute where it met the 36,160 level was at 10:17 a.m., which was extremely prophetic because 10:17 a.m. hints at the number 117. The Great American Eclipse Judgment Warning sign first hit the west coast of Oregon at 10:17 a.m., and then peaked over the center of the nation at 1:17 p.m. Both of these numbers hinted at 117, and this is because God uses the number 117 to point to the 117th Congress, which began on January 3rd, 2021, during which the Antichrist, Barack Obama, will rise to become president again, and the Antichrist. 117 is 9 times 13. 9 symbolizes judgment, 13 from the Bible symbolizes the Antichrist, hence judgment of the Antichrist. 9 times 13, 117. The path of totality of the Great American Eclipse was also over the U.S. for 4 hours and 4 minutes, which hints at the 44th president, and exited the U.S. at 20 hours 9 minutes Universal Time, which hinted at the inauguration of the 44th president in 2009. Also, the eclipse at the center of the country where it peaked traversed over an area named Little Egypt and a city named Cairo in Illinois, the state that Barack Obama is from. There is a ton more to be said about the date 11/4 in 2021, November 4th, including the many extremely profound and important prophetic signs that occurred on this date and what God communicated through these signs. And this is all explained in the extremely profound and one of the most interesting videos on this channel, the Great American Eclipse Prophecy video. Make sure you watch this very important video, as the information in this video is not only extremely interesting, but the message is imperative. It is imperative that everyone know what God was communicating through the signs on November 4th. That the number 34 symbolizes judgment on the nations is why in this diagram here, this United Nations resolution was numbered 2334. 23 being Barack Obama's number, and 34 also his number, and judgment on the nations. And this UN resolution, United Nations resolution, connects with Joe Biden's speech, his VACCINE speech, and this is in turn exactly 34 weeks before November 4th, 2021. God uses the number 34 to symbolize judgment on the nations that will come through the Antichrist in the end times period. The 34th chapter in the book of Isaiah is a prophecy regarding judgment on the nations. There are other verses in the Bible that speak of judgment on nations, but this particular chapter is the judgment on the nations chapter. The Indian Ocean tsunami in 2004 that killed 220,000 people in many nations was a judgment sign on the world, and the tsunami emanated from Indonesia, which is made up of 34 provinces. As explained in other videos, God also uses the number 34 to reveal Mr. World, Barack Obama, as the Antichrist that will rule the world and who grew up in Indonesia, which is made up of 34 provinces. This is why, for example, the United Nations resolution that Barack Obama orchestrated behind the scenes right before he left office was numbered 2334. This resolution condemned Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem, something no other former president would have supported. According to Bible prophecy, coming against Jerusalem and making it an international city is what the Antichrist and the world will do in the end times, and it is the very thing that God will destroy the nations for. Obama wore jersey number 23. He first entered politics at the age of 34. He grew up in Indonesia, a country God uses in his signs to symbolize the nations of the world, and is made up of 34 provinces. And the number 34 symbolizes judgment on the nations. And this is why this United Nations Resolution 2334 communicated that Barack Obama will be the Antichrist that brings judgment on the nations. Also, this resolution was passed exactly 9 months before the date 9/23 in 2017, which was the day that the great sign in heaven that is described in Revelation chapter 12 was fulfilled in the night sky. This chapter describes a birth and the dragon Antichrist that is thrown down from heaven to earth at the beginning of the end times period. The date 9/23 is a pairing of the numbers 9 and 23 that reveal this dragon Antichrist is Barack Obama. When asked by his disciples for the signs to look for of his return, Jesus used the metaphor of birth pains. 9 months is the average human gestation period. This is why this sign in the night sky on 9/23 in 2017 that depicted a birth occurred exactly 9 months after United Nations Resolution 2334. Barack Obama will rise to briefly rule the world in the end times period through ruling Washington, D.C., and Barack Obama first entered politics when he was 34 years old. Also, a prophetic 19 days, which symbolizes God's perfect judgment after Barack Obama's prophetic 50th birthday, was the day of the Washington, D.C. earthquake that caused $34 million in damages to the National Cathedral in Washington, otherwise known as America's spiritual home, and this communicated that Barack Obama will be the Antichrist that persecutes the American church. That the number 34 symbolizes judgment on the nations of the world is also, for example, the reason why the number 34 shows up in the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center on 9/11. The attack occurred before the stock market opened on the morning of Tuesday, September 11th, and so the Dow Jones was frozen at 9,605.51 points on 9/11, which was the closing number from the day before on Monday, September 10th. The prior trading day to this was Friday, September 7th, and on this day, the Dow Jones closed at 9,605.85 points, which was a difference of 0.34 points. The Dow's prophetic close at 25,444.34 points on the prophetic anniversary in 2018 of the 1987 Black Monday, in which all 23 of the world's major stock markets suffered a historic sharp decline, hinted at this 0.34 points that was highlighted on the day of the attack on the World Trade Center. And this Dow Jones number on 9/11 of 9,605 points hinted at 9/11 through adding the 6 and 5 to equal 11. As well, on 9/11 in 2001, the S&P futures contract was frozen at 911 points. Ultimately, this was pointing to the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart, hinting at 17 plus 17 equals 34. In other words, the number 34 symbolizes the attack on the World Trade Center, which symbolizes Isaiah chapter 34 and judgment on the nations. That the number 34 symbolizes the attack on the World Trade Center because it is 17 plus 17, which hints at the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart, is confirmed through the 144,000 hours connection from 9/11, and the number 144,000 is a prominent prophetic number from the book of Revelation, was the Parkland, Florida shooting in which 17 people were killed and 17 people were injured, which was further confirmed by the Christchurch shooting massacre in which 50 people were killed and 50 people were injured. The number 50 symbolizes Christ's church, and which was famous for its 17 minutes of live video footage that was broadcast on social media, which hinted at the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart. Exactly 2 months after the shooting in the two mosques was the Christchurch call to action, in which 17 nations gathered to discuss how to censor the internet. Again, the Dow's historic loss on the once-in-7-year financial wipeout day in 2001, when the markets reopened after 9/11, was 2 sets of 7 years after the prophetic eclipse and Black Monday in 1987 on the once-in-7 years financial wipeout day. And so Black Monday, 9/11, and October 19th, 2021 connect to each other through the 7-year cycle and through the number 34. October 19th is the 34th anniversary of Black Monday, and in the 9/11 events, we find the number 34. And the main big judgment warning sign was 9/11. The number 34 symbolizes judgment on the nations of the world, and on 9/11, the World Trade Center was struck down. October 19th is written as 1019, which hints at 2 ones followed by the number 9. The date 9/11 in the rest of the world is written as 11:9, and 11:9 hints at Genesis chapter 11 verse 9, which is the verse that mentions the Tower of Babel in the Bible. The root of the word for tower in Hebrew comes from the word for pride. In the Bible, towers symbolize arrogance. In the debris of the collapsed World Trade Center towers at Ground Zero, months after 9/11, a single page of the Bible was found by a photographer journalist, and this page was Genesis 11. The chapter about the Tower of Babel, the World Trade Center tower of its day. The story of the Tower of Babel in the Bible is the prophetic foreshadow of the Antichrist ruling one centralized government, a United Nations. The story of the Tower of Babel is of rebellion against God, who then judges the nations of the world for coming together by dispersing them around the world. The story of the Tower of Babel contains a leader named Nimrod, who is a prophetic type for the Antichrist. The people of Babel have a humanist type of religion, and they attempt to use technology to reach the level of God. This is symbolized by the tower they build. Today, this story of Babel is playing out through the humanist religion of progressive liberalism. Liberal politics is these people's religion, which since the arrival of Donald Trump, and especially since COVID, has become an extreme totalitarian political cult that has hypnotized the masses. Besides the mass murder they are already guilty of through the pressure to take the VACCINEs and their suppression and censorship of information regarding treatments for COVID, once they are successful in completely silencing their opposition, then their atrocities will accelerate and they will be free to commit them in the open through the use of the state, while each individual liberal hides behind their COVID cloth mask. Like the people of Babel, the progressive elites are seeking to reach the metaphorical heaven through their pursuit of immortality using transhumanist technology. However, for the sake of remaining focused on the subject of this video, in short, the new experimental technology of the VACCINE symbolizes the technology of the Tower of Babel, and the Antichrist Obama, leader of the world, symbolizes Nimrod, the leader of the people of Babel. Pharaoh in Egypt, a type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Hebrews for 400 years, and the number 400 symbolizes the Antichrist. 400 days before the fiery crash involving the horse sired by American Pharaoh was the day of the 2019 Kentucky Derby. In this Kentucky Derby, maximum security was disqualified after a 22-minute deliberation by the judges before the horse Country House was made the winner. The disqualification of maximum security communicated the loss of the walls of security of the nation. The The declaration of Country House as the winner after the 22-minute deliberation by the judges communicated that the Antichrist Barack Obama will overcome the 22nd Amendment's restriction on being elected more than twice to the country's House, the White House, after the Supreme Court deliberates the 22nd Amendment. Through the 25th Amendment, he will be appointed instead of being elected. He will be appointed vice president through the 25th Amendment after Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. Which is exactly why this maximum security country house Kentucky Derby connects with 400 days, which symbolizes Pharaoh in Egypt, to the day that the horse sired by American Pharaoh died in a fiery crash. This Kentucky Derby was 400 days before the horse sired by American Pharaoh died in a fiery crash on Pentecost. Pharaoh persecuted the Hebrews in Egypt for 400 years, and this Kentucky Derby was exactly 9 years and 11 months after Barack Obama went down to Egypt, which identified him as the Antichrist described in the book of Isaiah, chapter 31, which begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses." 9 years and 11 months hints at the 9/11 judgment warning, when the 110 stories of the Twin Towers collapsed and cracked the foundation of Federal Hall on Wall Street, which was named after a 9-foot-high wall of security. Hence the 9 years and 11 months connection to the Kentucky Derby of maximum security. And again, Triple Crown winner American Pharaoh, owned by an Egyptian racehorse trainer, is a Kentucky Derby horse. And so it is absolutely amazing that the day that Barack Obama went down to Egypt connects with exactly 9 years and 11 months to this prophetic Kentucky Derby, which in turn connects to the day that the horse sired by American Pharaoh died in a fiery crash on Pentecost. Exactly 9 years and 11 months back from the day that the horse named Justify won the Eclipse Award, on the same day as the rare earthquake in downtown Nazareth, was the day that Barack Obama gave his first State of the Union address to Congress. This address of Obama's was famous for its celebration of the heroic pilot that landed his U.S. Airways passenger jet into the Hudson River after it had suffered a bird strike to its engine, which is exactly how Barack Obama will become president after Kamala Harris's plane suffers a bird strike to its engine, probably on January 14th, 2022, which will be 1 day shy of an exact 13 years after Flight 1549 crash landed on the Hudson River. From the Bible, the number 13 symbolizes the Antichrist, as Nimrod, a type for the Antichrist, was the 13th generation from Ham. Haman, another type for the Antichrist, persecuted the Jews on the 2 13th days of the month, and the two Antichrists are described in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation. The crash of Flight 1549 in the Hudson River next to Lower Manhattan was a 9/11 judgment warning sign, and this is why Obama's address regarding the pilot occurred 9 years and 11 months before the Jesus signs with the earthquake in Nazareth and the Justify Eclipse Award. Also, the passengers of Flight 1549 that stood on the floating airplane in the Hudson River were rescued by boats, making this a Noah's flood symbolism sign, as Noah and his family were rescued from the judgment destruction by God in their ark. In the account of Noah's flood, the flood waters increased for 40 days, and this is why Flight 1549 crashed exactly 40 days before Obama and Congress celebrated the heroism of Captain Sully, the pilot of Flight 1549. The Bible says that 2 or 3 witnesses are required to confirm a matter, and this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming matters. And that's what makes what is being explained on this channel different, unique, and true as compared to other things. Without second witnesses confirming things, it is just a product of one's imagination. What is the second witness that confirms this 9 years and 11 months connection to the day that Justify won the Eclipse Award and the day of the rare 3.8 magnitude earthquake in downtown Nazareth? Is that this earthquake connects with exactly 40 weeks, which, as was explained, is especially prophetic when connected with earthquake signs, to the day that the barge moved for the first time since the year of Spanish flu due to the prophetic storm that caused record-breaking deadly flooding in eastern New York and western New England, which pointed to the flight paths of the two planes that struck the two towers in lower Manhattan on 9/11, which is what the flight path and this crash of Flight 1549 on the Hudson River symbolizes. Fire symbolizes Pentecost, as it was smoke and fire that came down on Mount Sinai on the Hebrews' 50th day out of Egypt, and tongues of fire came down on the disciples in the upper room on the first Pentecost of the church age, 50 days after Jesus' resurrection. The horse that was sired by American Pharaoh that died in a fiery crash on Pentecost was named Under the Oaks. There were 10 horses in the trailer that crashed and killed 9 horses. The numbers 9 and 10 paired together symbolize judgment on the nation, because Jesus judged the nation of Israel after he cured 10 lepers, but 9 of them didn't thank him. The 9 were Jews, and the one that praised God and gave thanks was a foreigner. Not only do the numbers 9 and 10 paired together symbolize judgment on the nation, but the numbers 9 and 10 added together also symbolize God's perfect judgment. 9 symbolizes judgment, and 10 symbolizes perfection. Hence, the number 19 symbolizes God's perfect judgment. Exactly 19 months before the horse under the oaks died in a fiery crash on Pentecost in a trailer carrying 10 horses was the day of the mass shooting in Thousand Oaks, California. And what is a second witness to this connection is that the number 19 is prophetic because it is 9 plus 10, and this 19 months connection connects to the day of the 9 out of 10 horses that died. This shooting in Thousand Oaks was exactly 19 months before the fiery crash involving 10 horses, and it was in turn exactly 10 years after November 7th, 2008, and the day the Pick 3 lotto numbers in the state of Delaware were 666. Joe Biden was the senator from Delaware, and this 666 lotto number in Delaware was 3 days after Barack Obama and Joe Biden were elected president and vice president. The day after their election, the lotto numbers in Illinois, the state Obama represented as senator, were 666, making this a second witness to this Delaware lotto number 666. Also, the date of this Delaware lotto number 666 is 11/7, November 7th, and 11 times 7 is 77, and on election day in 2020, Joe Biden was 77 years old. And this election involving Joe Biden in 2020 will lead the way to his old pal, Barack Obama, the Antichrist, coming to power, which is why the Pick 3 lotto numbers in the state of Illinois were also 666, 2 days before the lotto numbers were 666 in Delaware. 10 years is also 120 months, which is a number God gave Noah in regards to the timing of the impending judgment. But what is also a second witness to this Antichrist lotto number 666 and this 10 years connection is not only the 10 horses, but the number of deaths in the Thousand Oaks shooting. From the Bible, the number 13 symbolizes the Antichrist. 10 years after the lotto numbers that symbolized the Antichrist and Joe Biden, 13 people were killed in the shooting in Thousand Oaks, which was 19 months before the horse under the oaks died, who was sired by American Pharaoh. All of this communicated that the Antichrist, Barack Obama, will persecute the church and murder Christians. It also communicates, because of the fiery crash that killed the horse sired by American Pharaoh, that Obama will replace President Biden after a crash, which will be Kamala Harris's crash in a plane, after which Obama will first replace Harris and then replace Biden. This shooting took place at the Borderline Bar and Grill, which symbolizes America's border wall of security collapsing, and this shooting occurred exactly 45 weeks before the 45th president, President Trump, visited his border wall of security and signed his name on the wall, which made this a handwriting on the wall judgment sign, which is a reference to the book of Daniel in the Bible. Joshua led the Hebrews around the walls of security of the ancient city of Jericho before they collapsed in judgment from God, and right before the walls collapsed, the Hebrews blew trumpets. And exactly 19 weeks, which symbolizes God's perfect judgment, after Trump signed his wall, a section of his border wall of security collapsed due to high winds. The number 36 is 6 times 6, which is Antichrist symbolism, and it is 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. And the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is the number 666. And exactly 36 weeks before Trump signed his wall was the day that Trump visited his border wall of security on the date 110 in 2019, which hints at the number 110, the age at which Joshua died, who led the Hebrews around the walls of security before they collapsed in judgment. On this 110 date that hints at Joshua trees were illegally cut down in Joshua Tree National Park, and it was a national news story due to the government shutdown over the border wall of security funding dispute. The horse under the oaks died in a crash of the trailer carrying 10 horses, in which 9 horses died, and exactly 9 weeks later was the day of the horse buggy crash in Jerusalem, New York. This 9 weeks pairs with the 110 days back from the fiery crash that killed 9 horses to the fiery crash in the Daytona 500, which is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110 that confirm the signs and connections, and hints at 9/11, and the 2020 Daytona 500 was a 9/11 sign, as it was car number 11 that beat car number 12 by just 0.01 seconds, which made this one of many 11th hour going into the 12th hour signs, and hinted at 9/11 because it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people that flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union. Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness, and in English is an idiom that means last chance, time is running out, as in last chance for the nation to repent. Also, the Daytona 500 is 200 laps. This Daytona 500 stretched 2 days because of the rain on the first day when President Trump drove his limo, nicknamed the Beast, around the racetrack. In Bible prophecy, the metaphor of a beast is used for the Antichrist and the Antichrist system, and Trump drove his beast limo around the Daytona 500. The number 500 symbolizes the Antichrist on the same day as the 69th NBA All-Star Game in Chicago, which Barack Obama attended, which began with the famous teenager that did her renegade dance, and the Secret Service nicknamed Barack Obama Renegade. And this was exactly 7 months, which symbolizes the 70th week of the end times period in Bible prophecy, before Barack Obama posted his social media tweet in which he did the renegade dance. This social media post was also in the news because it regarded the election and his encouragement for young people to get out to vote. And this race was won after a second overtime period, which hinted at the two towers that collapsed on 9/11, and also pointed to George Washington, who was born on the date 2/22, and God pointed to George Washington through the 9/11 events. 9 + 9 + 9 days after the horse buggy crash on the 9th day of the month was the 2020 Kentucky Derby. Prior to this Kentucky Derby, I predicted that something prophetic would occur with horse number 10 because this horse's name is Thousand Words, which hinted at Thousand Oaks and the horse under the oaks. Sure enough, 20 minutes before this race, horse number 10 reared up and fell over, knocking over and breaking the arm of his trainer, Hall of Fame trainer Bob Baffert's assistant. Then, in the winner's circle, Baffert's other horse knocked Baffert over. This was a judgment sign symbolizing the walls of security of the nation falling over. The winning horse's name is Authentic, which hinted at the authenticity of the election that took place 2 months after this Kentucky Derby, the inauthentic election through which the Antichrist will come to power. And this horse's number was 18, which is 6 + 6 + 6, which hints at the Antichrist. And the horse that placed second and the horse that placed third were horses number 9 and 17, which hinted at Barack Obama, who was president from 2009 until 2017 and arrived in Washington, D.C. as the senator from Illinois in the 109th Congress and will return as the 47th president in the 117th Congress, which began on January 3rd, 2021. The 70 weeks prophecy is the most central prophecy in the Bible, and the 70th week regards the end times judgment period. Exactly 70 weeks prior to Baffert and horse number 10 falling over was the maximum security country house Kentucky Derby. This exact 70 weeks connection in between these two Kentucky Derbies is an extremely prophetic confirmation of the extreme prophetic significance of these two Kentucky Derbies. A 7 months connection in God's signs symbolizes the 70th week judgment period, because in the Bible, this period is symbolized by 7 years. Exactly 7 months after the maximum security Kentucky Derby was the day of the shooting in the Pearl Harbor Naval Base by a sailor for the USS Columbia submarine. God uses the name Columbia to symbolize America. The number 2300 is associated with the Antichrist in the book of Daniel chapter 8. Pearl Harbor is known for its 2,300 service personnel that were lost in the attack on Pearl Harbor. And this shooting on December 4th, 2019 is known for having taken 23 seconds. God uses the number 23 to point to the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. The 23rd triangular number is 276, which means in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 23rd row is the number 276. From the Bible, the number 276 is associated with ship symbolism. This is why 276 days before the 23 seconds shooting by the man from the USS Columbia submarine ship was the day that 23 people were killed in the Deep South tornado outbreak in March 2019. The USS Columbia shooter shot 3 people, and including himself, there were 3 deaths. The tornado outbreak occurred on the date 3/3. There were 3 dozen tornadoes, including the deadly EF3, and the last tornado occurred on the 33rd parallel in Columbia, South Carolina, knocking out a pillar of a church, leaving 3 pillars standing. making this a judgment warning sign for the church, specifically the American Evangelical Church of Laodicea, largely due to its Nicolaitan doctrine and works, which Jesus said he hates, and is coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have this doctrine, which I explain in the must-watch Big Picture of Signs Part 1 video, which is the main theme of God's big picture of end times judgment warning, signs, patterns, and connections. One of the main purposes for these videos, this video, and this prediction in this video coming to pass, is to prove what I have just said. The number 276 from the Bible is ship symbolism, and ship symbolism symbolizes the church. I'll repeat that. 276 is ship symbolism and is the 23rd triangular number. 23 deaths and the church in Columbia, South Carolina tornado connected with 276 days to the 23 seconds shooting and the USS Columbia. All of this communicated that the Antichrist, who wore jersey number 23 in high school, will persecute the church and murder Christians. In archaic English, the word trump means trumpet or the sounding of a trumpet. God uses President Trump to trumpet and confirm his signs. Trump visited the 23 crosses in Beauregard, Alabama, the location of the tornado, 23 days before the 23rd horse died at the Santa Anita horse race track. The death of this 23rd horse was a national news story because it was the 23rd death since the season began in December, and just prior to the 23rd death, the track had been closed for a lengthy period in an attempt to somehow upgrade the track and prevent further deaths. A period of 62 weeks is mentioned in the 70 weeks prophecy in the book of Daniel that regards the timing of the Antichrist, and the death of this 23rd horse was exactly 62 weeks before the death of the horse sired by American Pharaoh in a fiery crash on Pentecost. The death of the 23rd horse communicated the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 is the American Pharaoh, the American Antichrist. Also, this extremely prophetic 62 weeks connection between this 23rd horse that died and the death of Under the Oaks that was sired by American Pharaoh, which was one of 9 horses that died, is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 23 that confirm the signs and connections and point to Barack Obama. Another third or multiple witness confirmation to this 62 weeks connection is that 110 days back from the death of these 9 horses was the day of the extremely prophetic Daytona 500, and this was the 62nd Daytona 500. Also, yet another confirmation of this 62 weeks connection, which comes from the 70 weeks prophecy in Daniel chapter 9, and regards the timing of the end times period and the Antichrist's rule in the 70th set of 7, the 70th week, is that exactly 7 months after the death of this 23rd horse was the day that the barge on the Niagara River moved for the first time, on the day that the Maria fire began burning 9,999 acres, and therefore this 23rd horse and this 9,999 acres makes this yet another pairing of the numbers 9 and 23 that confirm the signs and connections and symbolize judgment and points to Barack Obama. The 23rd horse died on the 31st day of the month, and this pointed to the 31st chapter of the book of Isaiah that describes the Antichrist and begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt and rely on horses." As well, on the day of the death of the 23rd horse, which was 23 days after Trump visited 23 crosses, Pope Francis signed a declaration in Morocco that Jerusalem should be made an international city, the very thing that is against God's will in Bible prophecy, and the very thing that the Antichrist will do in the end times period. Later that day, Pope Francis again made news when he criticized President Trump for his planned border wall of security. This Pope-President Trump news story occurred on the day that the 23rd horse died 23 days after Trump visited 23 crosses. A period of 2,300 days is associated with the Antichrist coming to Jerusalem from the northwest in Daniel chapter 8. Rome, where Pope Francis is exactly due northwest from Jerusalem. Exactly 2,300 days before the Pope declared Jerusalem be made an international city was the day the Pope issued his first ever social media post with his first tweet. This symbolized the mark of the beast from the Antichrist system, the head of which will be Rome and the Roman Catholic system. And this communicated that this mark will involve tracking people through social media and their smartphones. God's main purpose for the end times period is for testing the faith of the saints, and their faith will be tested through this mark of the beast. And the number 12 symbolizes the church, and a confirmation of the prophetic significance of this first tweet by the Pope is that it occurred on the date 12/12/12, December 12th, 2012. The 70th week in prophecy is a symbolic 7 years, and 70 weeks is 490 days. Exactly 7 years before this first tweet by the Pope was the day a cow with the number 7 on its head was born, and this cow happened to be numbered 490. This is relevant because Joseph interpreted Pharaoh's dream that regarded 7 cows that symbolized 7 years of famine, and this symbolized the symbolic 7 years of the end times period, which is why this cow with 7 on its head connects with 7 years, then 2,300 days, then exactly 62 weeks, to the day that the horse sired by American Pharoah died. American Pharoah is the first racehorse since the horse named Affirmed in 1978 to win the Triple Crown. American Pharoah won the Kentucky Derby in 2015, 37 years after Affirmed won the Kentucky Derby in 1978. The number 37 hints at 3 sets of 7 judgments in the end times period that are described in the book of Revelation. 37 years is also 444 months, which God uses as connections to identify the 44th president. In this case, to reveal the American Pharaoh Antichrist, Barack Obama. The number 144 is an important and prophetic number in the book of Revelation that symbolizes God's people. 144 days after American Pharaoh won the Kentucky Derby was the day that the 2 antichrists met in the White House garden on the date 9/23 in 2015. The date 9/23 is a pairing of the numbers 9 and 23 that reveal Barack Obama is the Antichrist. The first time Pope Francis and Barack Obama met, Obama gave Francis a box of seeds from the White House garden in appreciation for opening the papal gardens to the public. During Francis's visit to the U.S., he gave Mass at Madison Square Gardens. In Bible prophecy, it is said the Antichrist will be the seed of Satan, and the first lie Satan told was in the Garden of Eve. In Bible prophecy, a period of 49 years is described in regards to the timing of the arrival of the Antichrist. The Antichrist that will rule the Temple Mount in the end times period. The 2 antichrists met in the garden exactly 49 biblical years after June 7th, 1967, which was the day that the Jews captured East Jerusalem and took control of the Temple Mount for the first time in 19 centuries. What is a second witness to this exact 49 biblical years to the day that the 2 antichrists met in the garden is that from the day they met in the garden, it was exactly 49 months after the Washington, D.C. earthquake the earthquake that was felt by 1/3 of the nation. This earthquake cracked the Washington Monument and caused $34 million in damages to the National Cathedral, also known as the spiritual home of America. God uses the number 34 to identify Barack Obama, as explained in other videos. One reason being is that the number 34 symbolizes the spiritual enemy, Islam, and Barack Obama grew up in the most populous Islamic nation, Indonesia, which is made up of 34 provinces. And this $34 million in damages to the spiritual home of America communicated that the Antichrist Barack Obama will persecute the American church. This biggest earthquake east of the Rockies in many years in Washington, D.C. on August 23, 2011 was 19 days after the 50th birthday of Barack Obama. A 50-year period from the Bible is extremely prophetic. The number 19 symbolizes God's perfect judgment. The earthquake occurred on the 23rd of the month, which pointed to the basketball president who wore jersey number 23. On the day of this earthquake in Washington, D.C., the Washington Nationals baseball game was delayed 20 minutes and began at 7:26 p.m., which was extremely prophetic because the number 726 points to the 726th word in the Greek New Testament in Strong's Concordance, G726, which is the word for rapture, which will be when God rescues his faithful from the coming persecution of the Antichrist. Exactly 49 months after this prophetic baseball game, the two Antichrists met in the White House garden, and that was in turn exactly 2 years before the Revelation 12 rapture sign, and this is relevant given that the score in this game was 2-0. In this game, the Washington Nationals played the Arizona Diamondbacks, and Diamondbacks is a type of snake. It was the serpent in the garden that first deceived Eve, and exactly 49 months after this Washington Nationals Snakes game, the two Antichrists, the two serpents, met in the White House garden. A confirmation of the prophetic significance of this game, pointing to the two snakes, was that the score of this game was 2-0. The Diamondbacks, the snakes, scored 2 runs, and this hinted at the two snakes Antichrists. The snakes beat the Washington Nationals, which symbolizes America, 2-0, and this hinted at the two snakes that met exactly 49 months later in Washington, D.C. in the White House garden. The hits count in this game was 6 hits to 6 hits, which hints at the number 66, which hints at the Antichrist and his number 666. And the two Antichrists are described in the book of Revelation, the 66th book in the Bible. Another witness confirmation to this prophetic baseball game in which the Snakes beat the Washington Nationals 2-0 was another Major League Baseball game that was being played at the time of this earthquake in the early afternoon. On this day, in Cleveland, the Cleveland Indians and the Seattle Mariners were playing a doubleheader, which is 2 games in one day, hence why they were playing a game in the afternoon. And at the time of the earthquake, the pitch count was 2 balls and 2 strikes with 2 outs. And at the moment of the earthquake, the batter for Cleveland hit for 2 bases. He hit a double during the earthquake. And again, it was the first of a doubleheader, which is 2 games in one day. This prophetic game during an earthquake occurred 2,222 days before the 22nd of September in 2017, the night that the Revelation chapter 12 rapture sign began. And it is believed that there will be a great earthquake at the time of the rapture. George Washington was born on the date 2/22, and God pointed to George Washington through the 9/11 judgment warning. The pitcher for the Seattle Mariners, which is the team from Washington State, on the day of this Washington, D.C. earthquake that famously cracked the Washington Monument, was player number 49, and this confirmed the exact 49 months connection from this game to the day the two Antichrists met in Washington, D.C. The score in this game at the time of the earthquake was 1-1, which was 2 runs total for this game. These signs and connections contain George Washington symbolism, and God pointed to George Washington through the 9/11 events, and the score 1-1 hints at the number 11, and the 9/11 judgment warning, which was the 11th hour going into the 12th hour sign, last chance to repent, which is why the hits count in this game was 11 hits to 12 hits. And this game was played in Cleveland against the team from Washington State. Cleveland and Washington are both names of presidents, and this hinted at President Grover Cleveland, the only president to serve non-consecutive terms, having skipped the 23rd presidency, which is why Barack Obama wore jersey number 23, because like Grover Cleveland, he will serve non-consecutive terms and will be the 47th president. God uses pictures on the pitcher's mound to symbolize the Antichrist, where he will be vanquished at the return of Lord Jesus Christ on the Day of Atonement in 2024, and the Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month in the Hebrew calendar, which is why the number 17 symbolizes the Day of Atonement and the Antichrist. And this is why this pitcher, player number 49, pitched from the pitcher's mound that symbolizes the Antichrist on the Temple Mount to player number 17 for Cleveland during this extremely prophetic earthquake. Also, a beast is used as a metaphor for the Antichrist and Antichrist system in Bible prophecy, and this beast has 7 heads and 10 horns, for which the number 17 also hints at. Also, this game contains George Washington and 9/11 symbolism through its series of 2s, its score and its hits count of 11-12, and on 9/11, the 2 towers were hit 17 minutes apart. 2 towers 17 minutes apart hints at 2 times 17 equals 34, and because the number 17 is Antichrist symbolism, this is one reason why God uses the number 34 to point to the Antichrist Barack Obama, and why it was $34 million in damages to America's spiritual home on the day of this baseball game with its series of 2s and batter number 17. Batting for Cleveland. In 2015, the 2 Antichrists met in the White House garden on the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar. And again, the day that these 2 Antichrists met was exactly 49 biblical years after the Jews recaptured the Temple Mount. Goat is Antichrist symbolism, and the Bible describes how the ancient Jews would conduct a ritual sacrifice involving 2 goats on the Temple Mount on their holiest calendar day, the Day of Atonement. At the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ, the 2 Antichrists will be vanquished from the Temple Mount on the Day of Atonement in 2024, which will be Judgment Day. From the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes judgment, and it is the most important number in God's end times judgment signs. Judgment Day on the Day of Atonement in 2024 will be exactly 9 years after the 2 Antichrists met in the White House garden on the Day of Atonement in 2015. This is rock-solid confirmation that the second coming will be on the Day of Atonement in 2024. God pairs the numbers 9 and 110 together to confirm his signs and connections, and also to hint at the 9/11 judgment warning. 110 days prior to the meeting of the 2 Antichrists in the garden was the day that American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown on the date 6/6 in 2015. 6/6 is Antichrist symbolism, and the book of Revelation that regards the Antichrist is the 66th book in the Bible. This confirms that Obama is the American Pharaoh Antichrist. 110 days and then 9 years after American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown will be Judgment Day, and the day the American Pharaoh Antichrist will be defeated by the breath of Lord Jesus Christ. In other words, this 9 years and 110 days connection confirms that the second coming is on the Day of Atonement in 2024. In turn, exactly 9 weeks prior to the day American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown was the day of the prophetic blood moon lunar eclipse on the date 4/4 in 2015 that lasted 4 minutes and 44 seconds and was the shortest lunar eclipse in over 400 years. This pointed to the 44th president, and Pharaoh persecuted the Hebrews in Egypt for 400 years, which is why this shortest blood moon in over 400 years connects with exactly 9 weeks to the day that American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown. The eclipse was centered over Hawaii and Indonesia, where Barack Obama grew up. This 9 weeks connection pairs with a 110 days connection, which pairs with a 9 years connection to the Day of Atonement in 2024. This 9 weeks and 110 days is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 110 that confirm the signs and connections and hint at 9/11. This trail of signs from this prophetic blood moon that pointed to Barack Obama to the Day of Atonement in 2024 confirms that it is Barack Obama that is the Antichrist who will be vanquished from the Temple Mount on the Day of Atonement in 2024. The reason all of this is relevant to the cargo ship that got stuck on the Suez Canal in Egypt is that the ship got stuck exactly 66 months after the two Antichrists met in the White House garden, which was 110 days after American Pharaoh won the Triple Crown on the date 6/6, which hints at the number 66. And the cargo ship got stuck in Egypt, and Pharaoh persecuted the Hebrews in Egypt. And in Bible prophecy, the number 666 is associated with the Antichrist, and the Antichrist is described in the book of Revelation, which is the last and 66th book in the Bible, which is what the date 6/6 and 66 months hints at. Not only did the cargo ship get stuck in Egypt 66 months after the two Antichrists met in the White House garden, but 66 months before Obama was in the White House garden was the day that Obamacare was passed in the Congress. The thing that Obama's presidency was most known for connects with 66 months to the two snakes in the White House garden, which connected with 66 months to the day that the cargo ship got stuck in Egypt. And again, the cargo ship got stuck in Egypt a prophetic 42 months after the Revelation chapter 12 sign was fulfilled in the night sky. And Revelation chapter 12 describes the dragon Antichrist, and it describes a period of 42 months in which the Antichrist will persecute God's people. In other words, what God is communicating with this Suez Canal ship is extremely important. And what God is communicating through this cargo ship involves the Antichrist persecuting God's people through the nation's healthcare system. This is why Obamacare connects with 66 months to the two Antichrists, and then another 66 months to this stuck cargo ship on the Suez Canal. And what he is communicating with this Suez Canal cargo ship is much, much more than connecting signs, and it is more than revealing the identity of the Antichrist. It is extremely important, and it is a deep message. It is vitally imperative that everyone learn what God is communicating through this Suez Canal cargo ship. What I have explained so far is just the beginning. There is so much more to tell you about this Suez Canal ship. This was really just an introduction. This is the end of part 1. In part 2 and part 3, I will explain why God used this ship on the Suez Canal in Egypt. Make sure you watch all of part 2 and part 3. I will leave links to the videos part 2 and 3 in the description box below this video. In part 2 and part 3, before I end this video, I would like to quickly explain a couple more important connections to the day the cargo ship got stuck on the 23rd of March. First of all, it should be noted that God uses the 23rd of the months for Barack Obama signs, the basketball president that wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. This is why, for example, Obamacare was passed on the 23rd of March in 2010. It is why, at the time of Obamacare being passed, he gave an interview about basketball and mentioned Obamacare to longtime famous basketball broadcaster Marv Albert on the basketball court that he had built at the White House, which solidified him as the basketball president and confirms the prophetic importance of the number 23 and the extreme prophetic importance of Obamacare, which symbolizes national health care.
Mr. President, your interest in basketball has been well documented in that there are a few things going on in your world every day. How often do you get to come out here and play?
Well, these days I probably play once every 2 to 3 weeks. Not as often as I'd like, but during, say, the healthcare debate, when things are just, going crazy over on Capitol Hill, a lot of times I'll just come out here and shoot, or I'll play a game of horse, and it takes an edge off things.
This is why Obama and Pope Francis met in the White House garden on the 23rd of September in 2015. And it is why the Washington, D.C. earthquake occurred 49 months earlier on the 23rd of August in 2011. It is why the Revelation chapter 12 sign, which describes the Antichrist, was fulfilled in the night sky on the 23rd of September in 2017, exactly 42 months before the ship got stuck on the 23rd of March in 2021. When asked by his disciples for the signs to look for of his return, Jesus replied with the metaphor of birth pains. The number 9 is the most important number God uses in his end times judgment warning signs, as it symbolizes judgment, and 9 months is especially prophetic as it symbolizes a birth and birth pains. As was explained earlier, God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together to reveal the identity of the Antichrist, Barack Obama. Exactly 9 months before the ship got stuck on the 23rd of March was the 23rd of June in 2020. On this day, Barack Obama and Joe Biden held a live teleconference to discuss what was needed to be done regarding Biden's campaign, etc. After Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on January 14, 2022, Barack Obama and Joe Biden will conspire to make Obama the president again. Their teleconference was broadcast for everyone to watch as a fundraiser. It was their first of 2 prophetic fundraiser meetings to discuss the election. The other one was on the 23rd of July. In between the 2 days in which lightning appeared to strike the Statue of Liberty and the One World Tower in Manhattan on July 22nd, 2020, and the day that lightning struck the One World Tower on July 24th, 2020. The 2 days of these news stories regarding lightning in New York City hinted at the 2 planes that struck the 2 towers on 9/11. And the story of lightning appearing to strike the Statue of Liberty hints at the loss of freedom and liberty when the Antichrist comes to power. Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven, which is exactly what will be symbolized when Kamala Harris falls from the sky in her plane crash and then is replaced with the Antichrist Barack Obama. And that's why these two lightning signs occurred on the 2 days before and after July 23rd, the second meeting of Obama and Biden, and these two men will conspire to make Obama the vice president after the death of Kamala Harris when she falls from the sky in her plane crash. Again, Obama and Biden had prophetic meetings, 2 of them on the 23rd of June and the 23rd of July. Coincidentally, Anthony Fauci was in the news on the 23rd of June for wearing a Washington Nationals baseball face mask when he testified in Congress. And then on the 23rd of July, he threw the first pitch at the Nationals baseball game, confirming that Obama, the Antichrist, who will be president in Washington, D.C., will persecute God's people through the VACCINE. Again, God uses pitchers on the pitching mound as Antichrist on the Temple Mount symbolism, and this prophetic sign of Anthony Fauci throwing out the first pitch of not only the game, but the 2020 baseball season is an extremely important prophetic sign, and God is communicating something very, very important, a profound message through this, which I will explain in a couple of minutes. First, I have to explain something else. But Anthony Fauci has been the head of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases for 36 years, since 1984. Keep watching, and I will explain more in a couple of minutes. Obama and Biden's live teleconference fundraiser raised $11 million. They raised $11 million exactly 9 months before the cargo ship got stuck on the Suez Canal, which blocked $9 billion a day in international trade. This connection is a pairing of the numbers 9 and 11. As explained earlier, pairings of 9 and 11 and 9 and 110 confirm the signs and connections and hint at the 9/11 judgment warning. What is also amazing confirmation of this 9/11 symbolism in this connection is that on the 23rd of June, 2020, the Chicago Cubs baseball organization posted a video documentary on their YouTube channel regarding what is called the Sandberg game, which occurred on the 23rd of June in 1984. It so happens that this player, Ryan Sandberg, wore jersey number 23. All right, so I have been looking forward to sharing this information regarding this Ryan Sandberg game for a long time now, looking for the opportunity for when it would come up in God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. And here it comes up. And so I'm going to go through the notes that I have written back last year regarding this, and I'll try to move through it quickly. First of all, as I just mentioned, the number 23 comes up because it occurred on the 23rd of the month, and the player himself, the Sandberg game, is about player number 23. And this is the Chicago Cubs, a team that God uses to point to Barack Obama, who is from Chicago, and the Antichrist symbolism involved in the curse of the billy goat. And so this number 23 in this game is also confirmation of the other prophetic single baseball game regarding the Chicago Cubs, which, by the way, also a documentary was made for and was posted on the same Chicago Cubs YouTube channel, which is the Kerry Wood game. And that game is amazing, and it is explained in the must-watch World Series Blood Moon Prophecy video. Absolutely a must-watch video. Very, very interesting. Anyway, that game, the Kerry Wood game, occurred exactly 23 years before day 1 of the final 1,260 days period of the end times rule of the Antichrist, this symbolic 1,260 days, which, as has been explained in many other videos, began on May 1st, 2021. The Kerry Wood game occurred on May 1st, 1998. And again, God uses pitchers on the pitching mound as Antichrist on the Temple Mount symbolism. And so this connection of 23 years to day 1 of the Antichrist's period reveals that the Antichrist is the basketball president who wore jersey number 23, who is from Chicago. So first of all, the first thing to be said about this Ryan Sandberg game and this post, this prophetic post of this game on the 23rd of June 2020, is that in between these two dates is exactly 36 years. The post was posted of this documentary on the 36th anniversary. And the number 36 is Antichrist symbolism. It is 6 times 6 and also 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6. And also the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, in the last row of the last number in the 36th row is the number 666. Also 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. And that is why we have this prophetic Antichrist period of 36 years in between these two signs. And this isn't the only example of God using a 36-year period as Antichrist symbolism in his connections. The Ryan Sandberg game that occurred on June 23rd, 1984, was exactly 390 months before the 23rd of December in 2016, which was the day of the very prophetic UN Resolution 2334, which has been explained in other videos, but it was orchestrated by Barack Obama behind the scenes, and it condemned Jewish settlements in East Jerusalem, the old city where the Temple Mount is. And the big no-no in God's end times prophecy is the nations ganging up on Israel and seeking to make Jerusalem an international city. And no other former president would have condemned settlements in East Jerusalem other than Barack Obama, the truthfully a radical leftist and anti-Israel guy. And so anyway, that UN Resolution 2334 occurred exactly 9 months before the Revelation 12 rapture sign was fulfilled in the night sky on the 23rd of September in 2017. And that sign, again, describes the Antichrist, but it also describes or depicts a birth. And 9 months symbolizes a birth. So that's why this connection is extremely profound. Now, again, the Ryan Sandberg game occurred 390 months before the UN Resolution 2334. And the number 390 symbolizes the return of Lord Jesus Christ. I have explained that many other times in other videos, so I won't explain it again. But the return of Lord Jesus Christ will be with the rapture event. And again, the Revelation 12 sign depicts the rapture. And so we have a 390 months connection, then which connects then with another 9 months to the rapture sign. And the rapture sign is about the return of Lord Jesus Christ. The starting pitcher for the Cardinals, the team that the Chicago Cubs played in this game in 1984, was named Citronella. That's his last name. And when the broadcast his stats in his story, it used the quote, it quoted, and I'm quoting the broadcast, it called it the Citronella story, which was a play on the Cinderella story. And God has used the Cinderella story symbolism before as symbolism for the rapture, including the Cinderella story in Game 3 of the 2018 World Series, which was the most prophetic 29th anniversary of the 1989 World Series earthquake that occurred in the opening of the broadcast of Game 3. This Game 3 in 2018 went past midnight, which is Cinderella story symbolism and also rapture symbolism, because it is recorded in the book of Matthew that the rapture event will occur at the midnight cry, and then the winning home run hit by the Dodgers, which is the team God uses for rapture symbolism, was this rags to riches story, which is Cinderella story symbolism player that hit the final game-winning home run. It was the longest game in World Series history, and it occurred exactly 70 weeks after Tropical Storm Cindy. And 70 weeks comes from the most central prophecy in the Bible, which regards the timing of the return of the Messiah. And so that's why this Citronella story occurs in this game that occurs 390 months, which symbolizes the return of Lord Jesus Christ, which connects to the rapture sign. Also, God uses the curse of the billy goat with the Chicago Cubs, and one aspect of this game was a controversial fan interference when the fan reached over into the playing area and interfered with a catch that would have otherwise been made by the outfielder. And this exactly mirrored the extremely prophetic incident in 2003 in the national championship game, which many believe led to the Chicago Cubs losing and not making the World Series. And that's also that 2003 series is prophetic, but I'm not going to get into that in this video here. Now, the thing about this game was this was a nationally televised game in an era when it was a big deal. It was the Saturday game of the week. And in this era, if you lived in a city that didn't have a baseball team, you didn't watch any other baseball games ever on TV unless it was this Saturday game. So, in other words, many, many people were watching this game, which lends to this prophetic significance of this game, which is why God used this game. Bob Costas, for example, was the broadcaster, the sports announcer, and he was part of this documentary as well. So this game was Ryne Sandberg, an all-star player, famous player. It was his coming out game. It was the game that made him famous. I believe it was his rookie year. Now, this game is regarded as one of the most exciting baseball games in all of history. And it was so exciting that as the game was ending, near the end of the game, because it's this nationalized televised game and CBS has other commitments with other shows and advertisers, etc., they want the game to be ending soon. But as I'll explain in a minute, it didn't end with the normal amount of 9 innings. It went into extra innings. But right before the end of the 9th inning, Bob Costas was forced to announce that Willie McGee, the player for the Cardinals, was the player of the game, even though it was premature to have said it. But Willie McGee hit for the cycle. He hit a single, a double, a triple, and a home run. So even if the Cardinals were to lose in the extra innings, Willie McGee would still likely be the player of the game because he hit a cycle, which is a very, very rare thing to hit. In fact, most players never hit a cycle in their entire career. But Willie McGee, what the point is that Willie McGee, despite having hit the cycle, was not the player of the game. It ended up being Ryne Sandberg. Okay, now the relief pitcher, the pitcher that comes in at the end to close the game, they call him the closer in baseball, was this famous all-star closer, Bruce Sutter. He was this dominant pitcher in the 1980s that if he came in to close the game was a done deal. But he came in to close this game and with a lead in the 9th inning, but Bruce Sutter, this pitcher, gave up a home run to Ryne Sandberg in the 9th inning to tie the game and move it into extra innings. Now, Bruce Sutter is player number 42, which is Antichrist symbolism. 7 times in Bible prophecy, the number 42 is associated with the period of the Antichrist's rule. So this is amazing, and as has been explained many times in other videos, and I believe in this video also, God uses pitchers on the pitching mound as symbolism for the Antichrist on the Temple Mount in the end times. So now we come to Ryne Sandberg. First of all, let's start with the first inning. Ryne Sandberg hit a hit in the first inning to tie the game at 1-1. That's quite interesting just in itself. A single, a one-base hit, tying the game at 1-1 in the first inning. This right away hints at the number 11 and the 11th hour symbolism, which I will explain in a minute. But then Ryne Sandberg hit a home run in the 9th inning to left field off Bruce Sutter, a 2-run home run to tie the game at 9 after 9 innings. And Ryne Sandberg is player number 23. And again, God pairs the numbers 9 and 23 together to confirm the signs and reveal the identity of the Antichrist. That's been explained already. So player number 23 hits a home run, ties the game at 9 after 9 innings. When it was tied at 9-9 after 9 innings, the hits were 11 hits to 12 hits, which, as been explained in other videos, is pointing to the 11th hour, which was the 9/11 sign. The 9/11 sign is the 11th hour sign because it was Flight 11 with a crew of 11 people. The second plane had a crew of 9 people that flew into the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union. Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness, and in English is an idiom that means last chance, or time is running out. As in 9/11 was the last chance, time is running out, warning for the nation to repent. And so we have already a beginning of this 9/11 symbolism in this Ryan Sandberg game. Okay, so again, after 9 innings, the score is tied at 9-9, and the hit count is 11-12. Ryan Sandberg then, in the 11th inning, in the bottom of the 11th, did it again. He hit another 2-run home run to the left field off of Bruce Sutter, Antichrist symbolism, to tie the game at 11. So it was tied at 11-11 after 11 innings, and Ryan Sandberg tied the game at 9-9 after 9 innings. This is clear 9/11 judgment warning symbolism. After this home run, the hits count was tied at 13-13 for each team, which made this also Antichrist symbolism because, again, the number 13 symbolizes the Antichrist. So the game went to the 12th inning, and then this player named Dave Owen finally hit the game-winning run with a base hit to win the game. And this player was the last player from the Cubs bench to play on the game. In other words, he was called in from the clubhouse because he was getting ready to leave the stadium, but they needed him. He was the very last player that could be used in the game because all of the other players had already been used, and he had to come and play in this game, and he ended up being the hero of the game with the game-winning hit here. And the hit made the final score of 11-12 after 12 innings, which is more confirmation of this 11th hour going into the 12th hour symbolism, which points to the 9/11 judgment warning sign. So the game was tied at 11-11 after 11 innings, and then the game ended in the 12th inning with a score of 11-12. And so this is an amazing baseball sign. It's just a beautiful thing, this Ryan Sandberg game. And again, the prophetic significance and how it ties into this is that it occurred exactly 36 years, which is Antichrist symbolism, before Barack Obama and Joe Biden raised $11 million, which is the 11th hour symbolism, which connects with 9 months to the day that the Suez Canal cargo ship got stuck, clogging, blocking international trade of $9 billion a day. In other words, this is more confirmation of the massive importance of what God is communicating through this Suez Canal ship and this prophecy, which again is proven through this prediction. You need everyone, it's imperative that everyone learn what God is communicating through this Suez Canal ship, and it will be explained in parts 2 and 3. I will leave a link for parts 2 and 3 in the description box below this video. Earlier I mentioned that the prophetic sign of Anthony Fauci throwing the first pitch of the season was an extremely important sign. Once again, on the 23rd of June in 2020, Barack Obama, the Antichrist, met with Biden, the man that will make Barack Obama become president again. On June 23rd, the Chicago Cubs YouTube channel posted a documentary of its prophetic Sandberg game that was a major judgment warning sign with 9/11 symbolism, and it revealed the identity of the Antichrist through Sandberg's jersey number 23 and the pairings of the numbers 9 and 23 in the game, and through the game being in Chicago, where Obama is from. The Chicago Cubs posted this video on the 36th anniversary of this game, and on this same day, Anthony Fauci was in the news for wearing a Washington Nationals baseball face mask when he testified in Congress. On the 23rd of June 2020, Anthony Fauci was serving his 36th year as the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. Then, on the 23rd of July, In between the lightning signs that pointed to 9/11 and the loss of freedom in America, Fauci threw the first pitch from the Washington Nationals pitcher's mound, which symbolized the Antichrist on the Temple Mount that will be the president in Washington, D.C. Again, Jesus said he saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. And if I haven't explained it in this video, I have in many other videos. Barack Obama's name in Hebrew means lightning from heaven. In other words, God used this 36 years connection to this baseball game in 1984 in order to point to Fauci, who has been the director of the NIAID for 36 years. In fact, Fauci was wearing jersey number 19 when he threw the first pitch. From the Bible, the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment, and the number 10 symbolizes God's perfection. Hence why, in God's signs, the number 19 symbolizes God's perfect judgment. Exactly 19 weeks after the Sandberg game on the 23rd of June in 1984 was the day in November 1984 that Fauci first took his position as director at the NIAID, which is stunning confirmation that God is pointing to Anthony Fauci. The name Fauci in Italian means sickle, as in the sickle that is used by the angel in Revelation chapter 14 to harvest the grapes that are thrown into the winepress of God's wrath. Many millions of people are going to die because of Anthony Fauci and his VACCINE. And it is his VACCINE. And by the way, anyone that says that the VACCINE is safe is either lying or doesn't know what they are talking about, because it is impossible to know what the long-term effects are of this experimental technology that has never worked in any other trial. And when it was tried on animals for the last 10 years, it always ended up in disaster. And this time around, they skipped the animal trials. And each time they did test this technology on animals, the animal produced a robust amount of antibodies. But then when the animals encountered the real wild virus, it ended up in disaster and death for the animal. The animals had autoimmune disorders, which interestingly is what AIDS is. And Fauci came to head the NIAID after he stole a colleague's breakthrough work on AIDS and delayed its publication by 6 months, costing many, many people's their lives, and along with another crony of his, took credit for the work. In other words, through Fauci's connection to AIDS, God is pointing to what is going to happen to many of those that took the VACCINE. In fact, it has the acronym AID, ADE, antibody dependent enhancement. The media and the left will blame the supposedly deadlier DELTA variant form of the virus, which is a lie. It is impossible for the coronavirus to mutate enough for a different and deadlier variant, but the media and the left will blame the un-VACCINE-ated conservatives and Christians. But that isn't even the beginning of the truth about the VACCINE. Anyway, despite the brainwashing of the liberal media portraying as some type of caring citizen making sacrifices for the common good, the truth about Fauci is that he is an extremely corrupt and evil man. First of all, one isn't the head of a department of government for 36 years without being corrupt. But Fauci, because of the Bayh-Dole Act in the 1980s, which allowed government workers to profit from VACCINEs, for many years now, Fauci has been the gatekeeper of VACCINEs and has controlled the pharmaceutical industry. He is at the top of this plague of corruption. I will leave a link to a video that must be watched on the website of Robert Kennedy Jr. that is an interview with intellectual property rights patent expert Dr. David Wood that will be eye-opening. You will learn how the system works. Fauci is a cross between J. Edgar Hoover and Bernie Madoff. One more thing here. The 1987 Black Monday Prophecy video on this channel explains the prophetic parallels between President Woodrow Wilson and Barack Obama. One being that Wilson conceived the League of Nations, and Obama the Antichrist will lead a new incarnation of the League of Nations and United Nations. He will persecute the world through this international body and the VACCINE. What is a confirmation of this is that from the day that Woodrow Wilson died, it is 22,188 days to the day that Fauci took control of the NIAID. Other videos explain how the number 22 symbolizes the mark of the Antichrist, which will be related to the VACCINE, and how the number 188 symbolizes extreme judgment warning. And if this wasn't enough confirmation that God is using 9/11 symbolism connecting with this Suez Canal ship, we have another connection I'll just go through quickly here. God uses 7 months connections in his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections because the 7 months symbolizes the symbolic 7 years that is alluded to in Bible prophecy. And for the end times period, of course, it's just symbolic though, or rather it began in 2017 with the Great American Eclipse. And this is confirmed with the Great American Eclipse that will occur in 2024, 7 years later, at the end of the end times period. Exactly 7 months before this ship got stuck in the Suez Canal was the 23rd of August in 2020. And this was the day of the prophetic sign in London in which the bridge got stuck at the two towers in London, the London Tower Bridge. And this is hinting at the two towers on 9/11, of course. And it got stuck, just like the Suez Canal ship got stuck. And on this day, the worldwide coronavirus case count reached 23 million. And it was reported that in the last 24 hours in the US, there were 44,000 new cases. And 44 and 23 paired together points to the 44th president that wore jersey number 23, the Antichrist that will rule the US and the world. Well, God used this this tower bridge in London before in his signs when David Blaine did his stunt, his endurance stunt there. We put himself in a plexiglass box for 44 days, which was pointing to the 44th president. And God uses David Blaine in his signs for 9/11 symbolism, which is what the twin towers of the London Bridge points to. But just one other thing, the glass box hung next to the two towers there, but also in Potter's Field. The area across the bridge is called Potter's Field, which is a reference, which is Antichrist symbolism when Judas hung himself in the Potter's Field after he betrayed Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, which was used to buy the Potter's Field. David Blaine was born on the same day that the Twin Towers were officially opened in 1973 on the date 4/4, which hints at the 44th president. And David Blaine is also famous for breaking the world's Guinness record for minutes underwater holding his breath, which was for just over 17 minutes on live television on the Oprah Winfrey Show. And this is one of many examples of 17 minutes God uses to point to the 17 minutes in between when the first plane struck the first tower on 9/11 and the second plane, which was the ultimate second witness sign. Because after the first plane struck the first tower, the world watched and was confused as to whether it was an accident or terrorism. But then 17 minutes later, as the world watched live and in horror, it was confirmed to be an act of terrorism and a judgment warning. A second witness, as the Bible says, is required to confirm a matter. David Blaine was also born in New York City. And so that's why God used David Blaine in this Two Towers London Tower sign. And the day that this London Tower Bridge got stuck was exactly 9 years after the 23rd of August in 2011, which is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 11, and the day of the Washington, D.C. earthquake. And because the number 9 symbolizes judgment, 9 years connections in God's signs and connections are extremely prophetic. And so the extremely prophetic Washington, D.C. earthquake judgment warning sign connects with 9 years and then connects to the stuck Suez Canal ship that blocked $9 billion of trade per day. Also, this 9 years connection from the Washington, D.C. earthquake that cracked the Washington Monument and caused many millions of dollars of damages to the National Cathedral, otherwise known as the spiritual home of America, this 9 years connection connects to the day of the 23 million worldwide cases, which makes this a pairing of the numbers 9 and 23 that confirm the signs and connections and reveal the identity of the Antichrist. The Antichrist that will persecute the American church. As well, for that matter, the 23 million connects with 7 months to the 9 billion of trade that was blocked per day, which is another pairing of the numbers 9 and 23. It was the world's trade that was blocked, and so this pairing of 9 and 23 reveals the Antichrist that will rule the world. Furthermore, it was 23 million worldwide cases. When his disciples asked him for the signs to look for of his return, Jesus used the metaphor of birth pains and used this metaphor in the context of earthquake signs. And exactly 9 months, which symbolizes a birth, after this Washington, D.C. earthquake, the USS Miami fire disaster, the submarine, it was in the 23rd state at the time, which is Maine. And this is a pairing of 9 and 23. And it was the 44th of this class of submarine. I think it's called the Los Angeles class of submarine, which was a pairing of the numbers 23 and 44, which points to the 44th president who wore jersey number 23. Furthermore, this 9 months connection connects these two dates, which are the 23rd dates of the month. This is the same for this 9 years connection, which connects these 23rd dates of the months. Once this prediction has come to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel and read the homepage of the website trumpprediction.com or harriscrashprediction.com. Time is running out, and if for some reason you don't have enough time to watch all of the videos on this channel, I will leave a list of the most important videos in the description box below this video or on the homepage of the website. In terms of God's prophetic signs and knowing what God is doing, after having watched this video, you are now one of the most informed people on the planet. The question is, what will you now do with this information? And how many people will you help get this video to? Keep on posting the link to this video everywhere in social media. And if you would like the PDF file for the flyer I hand out on busy street corners, place on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put in mailboxes, please contact me at darrenjacksinbox@gmail.com. In my opinion, every single believer, unless they have a health condition, should be doing something like this in the streets every day. Also, everyone should have some of these flyers in their pockets, handing them out as they go about their daily business, when they walk from their car into the bank or to the grocery store. As they walk up and down the aisles of the grocery store, hand them out to people. I personally don't know what someone is thinking if they are not doing this. And if someone thinks that they are too shy to do this, what I have to say is get over it. Courage isn't a lack of fear. It is action in spite of it. And God wants us to be courageous for him. Keep in mind Jesus' parable of the 10 bags of gold. The bags of gold represent our abilities and opportunities, and the servants represent Christians. The knowledge in this video and the knowledge of the Lord's timing is a bag of gold. The Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold was banished to hell. The Reformed, Lutheran, Calvinist, once saved, always saved theology that says that a Christian doesn't have to do anything is false and is deception from Satan. Also keep in mind Ezekiel chapter 33. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, so that the people are not warned, the sword comes and takes any one of them, that person is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at the watchman's hand. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. The Pope is the first of the two antichrists. Catholicism isn't the Bible and isn't Christianity. There will likely be a massive Mary ghost that the whole world will see, but it will be demonic deception. Praying to Mary is praying to demons. Most people's spiritual experiences are demonic deception, especially if they are not a true follower of Christ. All of the supernatural experiences that Catholics experience that confirm for them that Catholicism is true are demonic deception. The same applies to all other false religions and New Age spirituality. In 2 Thessalonians, it says we get the deception we ask for. In other words, it is foolish to rely on spiritual or mystical experiences, and those that do are asking for demonic deception. The supernatural highs from yoga and meditation are demonic deception. They are the counterfeit Holy Spirit. There is absolutely no New Age or collective consciousness type of explanation for how these predictions were known ahead of time. They were known ahead of time through Bible prophecy and watching for God's prophetic signs. Jesus was not just another supposed enlightened master like the supposedly enlightened Buddha. Jesus was God incarnate, and he is the only way to eternal life and to God the Father. Jesus died for you. It is time to repent, which means to change one's ways and turn to God and become a disciple of Jesus. The purpose of the predictions in this video, the reason for God giving me a voice through these predictions in this video that will come to pass, is to prove the following things. The God of the Bible and Israel is the true God. God has a son, and he died for everyone. Everyone can be saved if they repent of sin and put their trust in him. And if you haven't done this already, there is no time like the present. You can begin this honest and sincere relationship with God through a humble prayer, asking for forgiveness for your sins, and thanking him for sending his son, Lord Jesus Christ, to pay the ransom so that you can be with him forever. Obviously, when these predictions come to pass, you will know that you should watch all of the videos on this channel, beginning with the videos that are linked to in the description box below this video. I strongly recommend not going through the videos on this channel in random fashion, selecting titles that may be interesting, but rather I strongly recommend following my recommendations that are listed in the description box below this video. This channel is not a daily or weekly update on the latest news. Rather, this channel is a library that has documented God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. Hopefully you at least found this introduction video to be interesting, and if so, please leave a like and upvote the video, and please consider sharing the video. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com, or PredictionsProveIt.com, and also check out the other information that I have linked to on the website. You should also pause this video right now and make a note of my other social media outlets. You never know when you will need them, and you might not be able to find them later. Also, if you want to download these videos as podcasts, I now have a podcast channel at Podbean, which is named Predictions Prove It.